Chapter 147. Qin Yining sat on the rose chair, and Pang Xiao bent down to look at her. Their faces were very close, and she could almost smell his unique refreshing scent. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat, and then it began to beat wildly. Her cheeks were dyed red, and a layer of mist appeared in her bright eyes due to embarrassment and anger. This person was really... Qin Yining was almost unable to distinguish his feelings towards Pang Xiao. He was angry at his arrogant and direct actions, but his heart couldn't help but throb. However, if she really accepted this garden in front of everyone, not to mention offending the demon empress, even her father would be suspected by the emperor of colluding with the enemy and betraying the country. She didn't have the right to decide whether she wanted to be bound to Pang Xiao, because behind her was the fate of the entire family Qin. At this moment, Qin Yining suddenly felt that if Pang Xiao wasn't from Daeju, if their two countries didn't have such a relationship, or if she wasn't the daughter of family Qin, and if Pang Xiao wasn't Pang Zhongzheng's son, then everything would be fine. After all, there were too many differences between them. Pang Xiao didn't want to let go of any of her tiny emotions, so he kept watching her carefully. Her red cheeks and watery eyes clearly revealed that she was already moved, but her gradually dimming eyes and pink lips that she couldn't help but purse also expressed her helplessness and compromise. Pang Xiao immediately understood Qin Yining's concerns. As expected, Qin Yining stood up, looked up at Pang Xiao, and said righteously, "I don't accept a reward without any effort. Moreover, I have nothing to do with little Wang Yi, so I can't accept such a valuable gift for no reason. I ask that little Wang Yi take back his order." Such a strong refusal made the womenfolk come back to their senses from the dreamlike declaration. Some of the clear-headed women who understood national affairs understood Qin Yining's meaning. Of course, there were also people who secretly scolded Qin Yining for not knowing what was good for him. Who is little Wang Yi? To be so courteous to a woman, it was a blessing that she had accumulated over 8 lifetimes. Qin Yining actually dared to forcefully reject her and even said such hurtful words like "this has nothing to do with you." Wasn't she afraid that little Wang Yi would kill her in a fit of anger? The scene fell silent. Just as the Sun Clan members stood up worriedly, fearing that Pang Xiao would break Qin Yining's neck in a fit of anger, Pang Xiao burst into laughter. "You're still looking down on me. My self-esteem is almost gone because of you." He no longer called himself this king. "Wang Yi, please be careful with your words." Qin Yining frowned. "I'm sure Wang Yi already understood what I said just now. Wang Yi and I don't walk the same path, so I ask Wang Yi to conduct yourself with dignity. It doesn't matter if we don't walk the same path. I'll just walk the same path as you. I like you and want to please you. This is my own business and has nothing to do with you." Qin Yining's almond-shaped eyes widened. She didn't expect this person to be so thick-skinned. He even dared to say such words in public. "Sister Yi, if you don't like it, I definitely won't force you. Think about it, when have I ever forced you before?" When Qin Yining thought about that forced kiss, her face flushed red. She really wanted to give this thick-skinned guy a good beating. Pang Xiao didn't seem to notice and continued to smile. "This garden is just to tease you. In the future, if you don't want it, I definitely won't force you. However, you'll have to bear with it this time. This morning, I've already signed the deed to the land and the house in your name. I'm sure that when you return home, your head shopkeeper will give it to you." "You?" Qin Yining was stunned. All right, it's my fault." In order to see her expression clearly, Pang Xiao bent down to her height again. While observing her expression, he softened his tone and coaxed her, "Don't be angry, all right? I won't be like this in the future, just this once." Qin Yining looked at Pang Xiao, who was speaking to her so nicely, and found it hard to associate him with the rumored murderous man who killed without blinking an eye. It was also because he was such an iron-blooded and domineering person that she was moved by his gentleness in front of her. Pang Xiao had prepared the deed to the land and the house in advance and forced it on her. He had cleared most of the suspicion on her and her father, and he had also taken the blame for her. She was the one who had benefited from it, but outsiders would scold him for forcing her. Qin Yining looked at Pang Xiao with a complicated gaze. He couldn't refuse anymore. Pang Xiao laughed. He felt that she looked like a snowy white rabbit, even her rabbit ears drooping. He couldn't help but want to pat her head. However, he knew that his high-profile declaration had already achieved the goal of intimidating some people for her. If he went too far, there would be people criticizing her behind her back. In any case, there were still many opportunities, so there was no rush. Pang Xiao turned back to sit at the head of the table. Qin Yining also sat back thoughtfully. At this time, the Empress' expression was extremely ugly. The Emperor doted on her, but the Emperor had never been so gentle to her. Also, the Emperor was an old man about the same age as her father. Prince Zhongshiren was such a handsome and extraordinarily handsome man. The Emperor had just awarded her the Changchun Garden, and Qin Yining had received the Ning Garden, which was even better than the Changchun Garden. If Qin Yining had seduced the Prince Zhongshiren, then it would be fine. But now, even an idiot could see that in the relationship between Qin Yining and the Prince Zhongshiren was the weaker party. In terms of men and decency, the Empress had lost completely. Even the beauty that she was so proud of and confident in was slightly inferior to Qin Yining, who was like a blooming spring flower. The Empress secretly gritted her teeth. She had a belly full of anger, but she couldn't vent it. Pang Xiao stood up at this time. Everyone, please do as you please. This king still has matters to attend to, so I won't keep you company. After saying this, he ignored the Empress and only smiled at Qin Yining. Then he left with Huzi. The steward guarding the garden came in and bowed to Qin Yining. Master, Wang Yi ordered this humble one to listen to your orders in the future. This humble one kowtows to master. Great, the garden that the Empress had been so eager to borrow for the banquet was now Qin Yining's. When the womenfolk looked at Qin Yining and the Empress again, their gazes were very subtle. Qin Yining felt that Pang Xiao had given her a hot potato. But things had already gotten to this point. Since she couldn't refuse, she wasn't someone who couldn't take responsibility. Moreover, the Empress' ashen face really pleased her. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Rise." Then she looked at the Empress and bowed respectfully. "I will listen to Nyang Nyang's orders." The Empress glared at Qin Yining's young face that was so beautiful that it made her angry. After a while, she squeezed out the words from between her teeth. "Return to the palace." She stood up angrily and turned to leave. Cao Yuqing and Cao Guozhou's wife hurriedly chased after her. The womenfolk of the other families didn't get to eat the banquet. They had walked so many mountain roads in vain. However, they didn't dare to linger. They could only follow the Empress' footsteps and quickly leave. On the other hand, Qin Yining calmly watched the Empress leave. She magnanimously sat back down and poured herself a cup of wine and took a sip. The old madam, the Sun Clan, 2nd Furen, and 7th Xiajie didn't leave. This was because in the Empress' eyes, they were all part of Qin Yining's group. Moreover, the old madam didn't know how to treat Qin Yining right now. Chapter 148. As soon as the old madam spoke, it caused the 2nd madam to frown. 7th young lady even lowered her head with a red face. The Sun Clan couldn't bear it anymore and slammed the table and stood up. "Is this something that the old madam should say to your granddaughter? To think that you're a grandmother. What does my grandmother have to do with you? You've raised such a good daughter, but she's already doing such a despicable thing before she's even married. She seduced a man in public and even let so many people in the capital see it. As the old lord of this family, is it wrong for me to ask you?" The Sun Clan was so angry that they wanted to tear the old madam's mouth apart. "You have to speak with a conscience. Sister Yi didn't want to go to Shihua City for the peace talks. The old madam knows very well how she went. If I had known that the old madam was going to slander my daughter like this, I wouldn't have let Sister Yi obey the imperial edict for the safety of the family Qin. So many men couldn't do it for the sake of the country. Why did my daughter have to sacrifice herself to participate in the peace talks? Now, a pure and innocent girl is being gossiped about by others. Even you, her biological grandmother, aren't willing to let her go. You have to pat your conscience. Is this the right thing to do? Yes, you are right. The old madam is so powerful. She gave birth to such a good son like Qin Meng. How can she be wrong? We are the ones who are wrong. We should have directly resisted the imperial edict. We should have dragged your family Qin to be buried with her. What a Sun clan. You have such a sharp tongue to slander your mother-in-law. I must open the ancestral hall and divorce you. You wanted to divorce me long ago. You couldn't do it at that time. Try again now. I am now a first-rank noble lady. My chastity memorial arch is still erected outside the family Qin. You want to divorce me? Dream on. You unfilial slut. The old madam and the Sun clan started to scold each other like this. Second madam and seventh young miss were both shocked by this scene. For a moment, they even forgot to quarrel. Qin Yining, on the other hand, was much calmer. She pulled Sun clan back a few steps and helped her sit down with a smile. She brought a cup of tea to Sun clan and said, "Mother, please calm down. Old madam is my good grandmother. This is the first time I've seen someone talk about her granddaughter like this. I still have to thank old madam for her teachings. Mother, don't be angry." Qin Yining had thought things through. With the dispute over the matter of the Sun clan being beheaded, the two of them, grandfather and grandson, had completely shed all pretense of cordiality. Qin Yining no longer held any hope for the old madam, therefore, he spoke without any mercy. Old madam snorted, "Just answer whatever I ask you. As a grandmother, I will also plan for the future of the family of young ladies. Don't fail to appreciate my kindness. Many thanks for old madam's good intentions. However, I feel that old madam shouldn't have seen the business opportunity of Prince Zhongxian and want to sell your granddaughter for a good price to obtain greater benefits for the family Qin, right?" The old madam was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. She pointed at Qin Yining and scolded angrily, "You wild girl with no parents to teach you. Don't get carried away. Little Wang Yi said a few good words and you can't find north anymore. Don't forget your surname and your name. Don't you know what kind of thing you are? Once you leave the family Qin, will little Wang Yi give you a second look? Who has such a big tone and can actually make decisions for this king?" Outside the pavilion, Huzi lifted the bamboo curtain. Pang Xiao had changed into a dark blue outfit. His hair was tied up high and hung down behind his back. Compared to his elegant and noble appearance just now, he was more like an unsheathed sharp blade. When old madam saw Pang Xiao come, she stood up in astonishment and couldn't say a word. Pang Xiao carefully sized up old madam and said with a smile, "It seems that the rumors are true. You really don't treat Sister Yi well." Just an ordinary statement made old madam's face turn pale. She was afraid of Pang Xiao. Not only because of Pang Xiao's evil reputation that could make children stop crying, but also because of the past when Qin Huiyuan used a scheme to get rid of Feng Zhongzheng. This was also the reason why old madam didn't believe that Qin Yining would be favored by Pang Xiao. The hatred of killing one's father was absolutely irreconcilable. She didn't believe that Pang Xiao wouldn't care about what happened in the past. If he took revenge, how could their family Qin endure it? In the current situation, even the emperor had to lower his head in front of Pang Xiao, let alone their family Qin. Old madam had lived like a princess these years. Qin Huiyuan was extremely filial and rarely bothered her with things. Therefore, old madam, who hadn't experienced any major events for many years, was like a prey targeted by a fierce tiger when facing Pang Xiao, whose eyes were sharp as if he could eat people at any time. She completely lost the courage to resist. She was so scared that her whole body was trembling, her head was dizzy, and she couldn't speak. Pang Xiao coldly snorted. In the end, old madam was Qin Yining's grandmother, so he didn't continue to scare her. If she really scared Qin Yining to death, it would be hard to explain when he went back. Pang Xiao waved his hand. Huzi immediately understood and brought in a young and beautiful maidservant from outside. The maidservant was 16 or 17 years old. She looked like a spring onion with a thin figure and a beautiful appearance. Her eyes were especially bright. "This servant greets Miss." The maidservant knelt down and saluted. Pang Xiao said, "This is Ji Yun. Let her serve you in the future." "Thank you, Wang Yi, for your kindness. I already have enough servants by my side. I don't need another one. I'll pay for the monthly salary. She has some skills. She can protect you and help you do things. Be obedient. You're not allowed to refuse." Qin Yining frowned and pursed her lips. He was still so overbearing. Pang Xiao saw that she seemed unhappy and realized that his words just now were too tough. He quickly remedied, "I'm doing this for your own good. If anyone dares to bully you in the future, you don't have to endure it. When you can use your hands, don't use your mouth to avoid wasting your energy. If you're angry, just ask Ji Yun to kill her. Don't be polite." You. Qin Yining was so astonished that she didn't know what to say. Pang Xiao seemed to be able to see Qin Yining's concerns. His index finger lightly touched her delicate chin. He leaned closer to her and said, "Remember, even if you poke a hole in the sky, I can support you." Qin Yining continuously retreated and avoided Pang Xiao's finger. She also avoided the temperature that seemed to have suddenly risen around him. Old Madam, Second Madam, and Seventh Young Miss were already stunned. No one would have thought that Pang Xiao would actually indulge Qin Yining like this. Old Madam's lips moved. She wanted to say something, but Second Madam pulled her hand. Second Madam was born in a scholarly family. Normally, she wasn't like Third Madam who would curry favor with Old Madam. Old Madam also didn't like her very much. However, Second Madam's grip really made Old Madam's heart tremble. That's right. At this time, it was best not to say anything. They couldn't provoke this evil fetus. Otherwise, with his temperamental and murderous temperament, it was hard to say if they would be able to return home. Pang Xiao turned around and ordered, "Go tell the servants to prepare a carriage. This king will personally send Miss Qin and Marchioness of Anping back to the Fu." "Yes." Huzi immediately bowed and went to prepare. Pang Xiao then turned to look at Old Madam and smiled, "As for you, do as you please." After speaking, he didn't wait for Old Madam's response. He turned around and lifted the curtain to leave. Qin Yining supported the members of the Sun clan. Mother Jin, who was already stunned, and Bing Tang, who was about to suffer internal injuries from holding back his laughter, followed behind them. They left the courtyard and walked on a path filled with peach blossoms. Pang Xiao walked at the front. His figure was tall and straight. When he walked, his imposing manner was awe-inspiring. He was like a fierce tiger coming down the mountain, making people not to underestimate him. This kind of person, who could be considered a threat to outsiders, always catered to her carefully and lowered his posture in front of her. In reality, if Pang Xiao really wanted her, she believed that with one word, he could have the Dian dynasty emperor wrap her up and send her to him. However, Pang Xiao didn't do this. He would rather discredit himself in front of others to support her. He also indulged her several times. Qin Yining didn't have a heart of stone. How could he not be moved? Although she didn't like Pang Xiao's high-profile actions, she could feel his intentions. Looking at his back, Qin Yining furrowed her brows thoughtfully. Pang Xiao seemed to feel something. He turned around and met Qin Yining's gaze, which hadn't had time to withdraw. When their eyes met, Pang Xiao didn't seem to care at all as he turned around and continued down the mountain. However, his accelerated heartbeat betrayed his nervousness and excitement. With that kind of gaze, Qin Yining should also have feelings for her, right? The members of the Sun clan were supported by their daughters. They wanted to say something several times but stopped. In the end, they could only sigh. As for the Old Madam and the others, Huzi had already ordered people to keep them at the back. They weren't allowed to get close to Qin Yining. It was clear that Pang Xiao wasn't joking when he said to let them do as they pleased. The Old Madam's brows were tightly knitted into knots. She felt that she had lost all the faith she had accumulated in several lifetimes. Even if she didn't like Qin Yining and felt that Qin Yining was too smart and difficult to manipulate, in the end, Qin Yining was still the daughter of their family Qin. This little Wang Yi's leniency towards Qin Yining and his ruthlessness towards others formed a sharp contrast. Such a sharp contrast made the Old Madam have to be on guard. Not to mention other things, that maidservant named Ji Yun couldn't be allowed to stay. The Old Madam kept thinking as she walked. It wasn't until she got on the carriage that she realized that she, Second Madam, Seventh Young Miss, Mammy Qin, and the others had all been left far behind by Pang Xiao and Qin Yining. When she lifted the blue embroidered curtain on the window of the carriage, she actually saw Pang Xiao leading more than a dozen people on horseback and following around the carriage that Qin Yining and the Sun clan were in. Even that maidservant named Ji Yun was riding a horse. Moreover, she looked valiant and formidable. She was indeed a martial artist. The old madam was so angry that her head was buzzing. She said fiercely, "Let's slow down. Let them go first. Let them be complacent. I want to see how they will deal with this in the future." "Yes." The coachman obeyed and slowed down. In the front, Qin Yining, who was riding in the same carriage as the Sun Clan, tightly pursed his lips. This person was too overbearing. He didn't ask for her permission when doing things. Fortunately, he was in Daeju all year round. If he stayed for more Dian, wouldn't she be angered to death? Although she thought this in a fit of pique, the smile and gentleness in Qin Yining's eyes couldn't be hidden. This made the Sun Clan inwardly apprehensive. From the looks of it, even Qin Huayuan didn't clearly oppose it. Pang Xiao even confessed to Qin Yining in such a high-profile manner. In the future, was she really going to have an evil son-in-law? The carriage was escorted by Pang Xiao all the way back to the family Qin residence. This truly alarmed everyone in the residence. Chapter 149. Cao Guozhong was questioned by his daughter, but he didn't get angry. He only said in a deep voice, "I'll have to trouble the Empress to take care of this matter." Although the Empress was angry, she knew her father's power. She didn't dare to throw a tantrum in front of Cao Guozhong. She frowned and said, "Father, tell me, why did you give Prince Zhongshiren a garden?" Cao Guozhong shook his head and said, "This garden was originally given to another person. I only found out today that this garden was given to Prince Zhongshiren." This subject was about to ask this person, "Oh, who has the right to enjoy such a unique garden?" The Empress had originally just asked casually, but when the words came out of her mouth, the Empress's expression changed. She immediately understood. She leaned over and said in a low voice, "It was given to her." Cao Guozhong nodded and said, "This subject didn't expect that a Taitan princess would take the initiative to curry favor with someone surnamed Yun." The Empress pursed her lips and frowned more and more. She muttered, "This matter is not good. The Taitan people are ruthless and cunning. Anari is also not a good person. That person by her side called Sai Qin is even more cunning. Our cooperation with them is a big secret. This matter cannot be known to the Emperor. Otherwise, this subject and father will not have a good ending. If Anari reveals this matter to Yun, wouldn't she have something to use against us? This subject is also worried. However, the Empress doesn't need to worry about this matter. This subject will solve it. Although the Taitan princess wants to keep you and me in check, it's not that easy. However, this subject didn't appear when the Huichun garden was built. Ordinary people won't know that the garden was built by our family. I'm also afraid that the Emperor will ask about it. I still need the Empress to mediate. This subject naturally knows how difficult it is. Father doesn't need to worry. Yes, the Empress says so. This subject is relieved. While Pang Xiao was escorting Qin Yining and the Sun Clan back to the front gate of the Fu, everyone in the Fu was alarmed. Qin Huayuan had not returned yet, but Laroyi and San Laroyi were at home. When everyone received the news, they were all flustered. What a joke, that was a master who killed without batting an eyelid. Didn't you hear that even the Emperor had to be respectful when he saw him at the Meridian Gate that day? If they did not receive the evil spirit properly and were caught red-handed, their losses would be small, but if this person had a reason to slander the Dian and start a war, that would be a big problem. However, to everyone's relief, Pang Xiao didn't enter the door at all. She didn't even pay attention to the people who came to greet her. From beginning to end, Pang Xiao's gaze only fell on Qin Yining. She probably didn't care about anyone from the family Qin coming out to greet her. She only warmly instructed Qin Yining, "Take care of yourself. Don't wrong yourself." Then, she spurred her horse and left. Qin Yining was truly helpless. He looked at Bing Tang and Ji Yun following behind him and could only say, "Let's go back first. Ji Yun is new here. Bing Tang should tell her more about the Fu." "Yes." Bing Tang smiled warmly at Ji Yun. Everyone returned to their own courtyards. Let's not talk about what they discussed behind their backs for now. When the Sun Clan returned to Xingning Garden, They couldn't sit still. Mother Jin saw the Sun Clan spinning around like a top and couldn't help but laugh. What is Furen worried about? Nanny, you also saw what happened today. What did that rogue fellow mean by doing this? If he really likes our sister Yi, he could have asked the emperor for her hand in marriage. He didn't mention this matter, but he was so high profile in front of others. Our sister Yi is a young lady and doesn't understand these things, but as a mother, how could I not understand? I'm really afraid that sister Yi will be taken advantage of. When the Sun Clan thought of Pang Xiao's appearance and aura, as well as seeing Qin Yining's crimson cheeks today, they felt extremely flustered. Mother Jin helped the Sun Clan sit down on a high-back chair carved with flowers. She held up a white porcelain teacup with both hands and comforted, Furen, don't think too much. This matter can't be resolved just by thinking too much. In this servant's opinion, fourth young miss is someone who knows what's going on. Husband is also not a muddle-headed person. This matter should be left to husband and fourth young miss, but little Wang Yi has killed people like scything flax after all. Being born in a chaotic world, it would be wrong for our fourth young miss to follow a fool. In this servant's opinion, fourth young miss is a powerful woman who is not inferior to men. If she can really gain little Wang Yi's favor, it might not be a bad thing. But Pang Zhongzheng was sentenced to death because he fell for Marquis Yi's scheme to sow discord. Furen, there are many treacherous things in the imperial court. Back then, Northern Ji's tyrannical rule disturbed the people, and Northern Ji's incapable ruler ruled arbitrarily. Perhaps he had long been afraid of General Pang. Although General Pang's death was tragic and seemed to be due to Marquis Yi's scheme to sow discord, there was no lack of Northern Ji's incapable ruler's actions. If this servant can think of this matter, then little Wang Yi might be able to think of it as well. Moreover, since little Wang Yi is willing to get close to our fourth young miss, it means that he doesn't care about these things. The Sun Clan nodded and uneasily put down the teacup. Her fingernails tapped on the table irregularly. After a long time, she said, "Do you think he's deliberately getting close to Sister Yi to hurt her to avenge his father?" Furen is thinking too much. Madame Jin said with a smile, "Madam, you are too concerned. With young Prince Zun's martial arts and ability, if he really wants to take revenge, he can rush into the mansion and kill people. Do you think he can do it?" The Sun Clan trembled when she heard this. Just thinking about that scene made her feel cold, but she had to admit that Mother Jin's words were correct. So Nanny's meaning is that he might be sincere. Since ancient times, what has been the difficulty for heroes? Mother Jin smiled and said, "Fourth young miss has completely taken after Marquis Yi and Furen's good points. Even an old woman like this servant likes her when I see her, not to mention little Wang Yi. Not to mention little Wang Yi, even His Highness the Crown Prince would be moved when he sees our fourth young miss. Your daughter has grown up, and there are many men in the family who want her. Furen shouldn't worry about this. In the end, Marquis Yi won't watch fourth young miss suffer." Mother Jin's words not only praised Qin Yining, but also praised the Sun Clan and Qin Huayuan. This made the Sun Clan feel very comfortable and relaxed. However, when they thought of the old madam's filthy and unreasonable appearance, the Sun Clan still felt sullen. Without a backer, the Sun Clan was forcing themselves to change the habits they had developed over the past few decades. In the end, she also felt wronged. In addition, there had been too many things happening recently. The old madam and her sisters-in-law were not friendly, and there was also a concubine with a good background above her head. She was also worried about her daughter's future. After being attacked several times, the Sun Clan had only gone to the old madam's morning and evening meditation. On the way back, she was caught in the rain and fell ill. That night, she developed a fever. Chapter 150. When Qin Yining arrived, she saw Caiju, the head maidservant, carrying a small white porcelain bowl on a mahogany tray from the small stove under the corridor of the west wing. The bowl was filled with dark brown medicinal soup, which smelled bitter. Seeing that it was Qin Yining, Caiju hurriedly bowed and said, "Fourth young lady has come. This servant has just boiled the medicine for the Furen." "How is the Furen? Has a doctor been called?" "Which doctor was it? What did the doctor say?" Seeing Qin Yining bombarding her with questions, it could be seen that he was truly anxious. Cai Ju couldn't help but feel that the Furen was a blessed person. She softly said, Huye ordered someone to take his invitation to Imperial Physician Zhong. He said that the Furen was depressed and caught a cold from being drenched in the rain. Although it looks dangerous, as long as the fever subsides, it will be fine. Huye is in the room. Young lady, please come in. As the two spoke, they arrived at the corridor. Perhaps because she heard their voices, Cai Lan opened the light blue embroidered bamboo curtain for the two of them and softly invited Qin Yining into the room. The temperature inside the room was much warmer than outside. Qin Yining bypassed the screen and passed through the side room where the banquet was held. He turned into the inner room and saw Qin Huayuan wearing a royal blue robe. He was sitting on the edge of the bed and reading a book. Mother Jin was squatting on the footstool in front of the bed, guarding the Sun Clan. The Sun Clan had a cold handkerchief covering their foreheads. They wore snow-white undergarments and were lying on the light green brocade bedding. Their faces were abnormally flushed, but they were sleeping peacefully. Seeing the Sun Clan like this, Qin Yining felt distressed. He lowered his voice and bowed to Qin Huayuan. Then he went to the edge of the bed and quietly asked Mother Jin about the Sun Clan's situation. After hearing Mother Jin say that the Sun Clan was fine and having Bing Tang take a look, Qin Yining finally relaxed. He whispered to Qin Huayuan to stay in the outer courtyard study for the night, while he stayed behind to take care of the patient. That night, the Sun Clan felt a little feverish. Qin Yining kept watch all night. It was only when he saw that the Sun Clan's fever had completely subsided that he couldn't help but fall asleep due to exhaustion. When the Sun Clan members opened their eyes, it was already bright outside. The first thing they saw was Qin Yining, who was sleeping on the edge of the bed. Her long hair was scattered messily on her back, and half of her face was buried in her arms. From this angle, her eyelashes were very long, casting a shadow on her eyelids. After sleeping, she looked even more childish, like a cute and fragile porcelain doll. The members of the Sun Clan were stunned at first, but then they were overflowing with emotions. They felt as if they were soaked in a hot spring, and every blood vessel in their body was thoroughly warmed. This child was sincere to her. Time reveals a person's heart. The few things they had experienced together were enough to prove that Qin Yining was filial to her. The Sun Clan's hand trembled slightly as she patted Qin Yining's head. Qin Yining woke up as soon as he was touched. He raised his head and saw that the Sun Clan was already awake. He smiled and sat on the edge of the bed, then touched the Sun Clan's forehead. The fever has subsided. Mother, how do you feel now? Mother Jin prepared some plain porridge and side dishes for you. Let's eat some before you take your medicine, okay? The Sun Clan nodded and sat up with her arms propped up. Qin Yining hurriedly took a large pillow and placed it behind the Sun Clan's back. I'm fine. It just suddenly rained on the way back from Ci Xiao Garden last night. I was caught off guard and got caught in the rain. Look at you, your eyes are all bruised. I'm fine here. You should go back and rest. I'll wait for Mother to take her medicine before I go. I already went to tell Old Madam just now. Old Madam said that you don't have to worry about your health for the next few days. She wants you to rest well. The Sun Clan felt vexed when she heard Old Madam mention, so she only nodded. Qin Yining accompanied the Sun Clan for breakfast, then watched as the Sun Clan took her medicine. He waited on her to rest before returning to the master's study. She went back to catch up on her sleep and slept all the way until the afternoon. Just as she was hesitating whether to get up to eat lunch or continue sleeping, someone arrived outside. Young lady, someone from the second gate has come to pass a message saying that Master Zhong of Zhao Yun Agency has something important to discuss with young lady. He's waiting outside the residence right now and would like to invite young lady to come out. Qin Yining's sleepiness completely disappeared when he heard this. He hurriedly got up and instructed people to help her wash up. Master Zhong was an expert at doing business. He wouldn't look for her if it wasn't important. For Master Zhong to specially invite her out for a chat, it was enough to show how serious the matter was. Ordinary young ladies didn't leave the house at all. Qin Yining had business at hand, so it was normal for him to go out. He only told the Sun Clan that he wanted to go out, but Old Madam didn't care at all. Qin Yining brought Bing Tang and Ji Yun out. Qin Yining originally planned to bring Song Lan along, but Song Lan smiled and said, "It's inconvenient to bring too many people along. Ji Yun knows martial arts and Bing Tang also knows medical skills. It's just right for young lady to follow." Qin Yining thought about it and felt that this made sense. He instructed Song Lan and Qiu Lu to help him look after the house and take good care of Bai. Sure enough, he saw Master Zhong's carriage as soon as he left the residence. Qin Yining let Ji Yun and Bing Tang wait outside while he boarded the carriage. "Master Zhong, why did you call me out in such a hurry?" Master Zhong said in a low voice, "Boss, I have some clues about the origins of the group of assassins you asked me to investigate last time." Qin Yining heard this and said in surprise, "Really?" Although she had asked Master Zhong to help investigate, it had been a while. In addition, she didn't know much about Zhao Yun Agency's ability to gather information. At this time, she was very surprised. Master Zhong smiled and nodded in understanding. "Our people have good relations with the coroner in the city. From the information obtained from the coroner, the assassins at Xianenyu Temple should be the same group of assassins that the emperor encountered when he personally went out of the city to welcome the Marquis of Anping. The coroner said that the poison in their mouths is the same type. Moreover, their mouths all have the smell of Hu Yang." Hu Yang. That's right. This kind of Hu Yang is different from ordinary dry tobacco. Hu Yang comes from the north. The smell is strong and the strength is strong. Northerners smoke a lot. We don't smoke much here. In addition, the journey is long and the price is high. Therefore, there are even fewer people who use it. In the entire capital, there is only one shop that sells Hu Yang. The coroner said that the group of assassins all smoke Hu Yang. Therefore, I ordered people to quietly wait outside the Hu Yang shop. Unexpectedly, we really found some clues. Master Zhong lowered his voice even more. "These people who came to buy Hu Yang are all tall men. They don't talk much. Occasionally, when you listen to them talk, you can hear that they are speaking Taitan. One of them seems to be the leader. He doesn't look like a Dayan person. Not to mention his tall stature, his eyes are light gray. However, if you don't look carefully, you won't be able to see it." Qin Yining nodded. "What else?" "Our people are waiting outside the Hu Yang shop. Yesterday, we met these people who went to buy cigarettes. We secretly followed them and found their gathering place. I don't know what to do, so I came to ask for boss's opinion. Do we continue to wait and investigate, or does boss have other plans?" Master Zhong saw that Qin Yining was not surprised when he heard the words Taitan. He knew that Qin Yining already had his suspicions. In fact, Qin Yining had already suspected the Taitan from a long time ago. Daeju was in the north of Dayan, while the Taitan was in the north of Daeju. It was said that the Taitan and Daeju had been at war for years. Now that Daeju and Dayan were in peace talks, if Daeju had the energy to deal with the Taitan, it would definitely not be something that the Taitan wanted to see. Therefore, the Taitan tried their best to destroy the peace talks between Yang and Ju. Now that his suspicions were confirmed, Qin Yining frowned. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Where is that place? Let's go and take a look." Master Zhong thought for a moment and nodded. He instructed the coachman, "Go to the Yongkang Alley in North Jushen Market." Chapter 151. North Jushen Square was located in the northern part of the capital, near Chong'an Gate in the northern part of the city. If they went any further, they would be out of the city. This area was not densely populated, but there were a few large families living here. The Yongkang Alley that Master Zhong led Qin Yining to was a secluded area near Chong'an Gate. There were no large residences in the area, only some ordinary people. Deep in the alley, there was a large black door. Outside the door, there were two idlers squatting on the ground and chatting idly. When the carriage passed by, the sound of the carriage's wheels alerted the two large men. They turned around to look, scaring Qin Yining so much that he quickly closed the gap between the curtains. "What vigilant people!" "That's right. The people I arranged were smart and didn't get discovered. These two men must be the ones guarding the alley." Master Zhong pointed to a few places outside. "The people strolling around here are most likely their people. Although this residence looks small, it's a second-year residence. It can easily house 100 or 80 people. Qin Yining nodded. This place is indeed strange. Is this the only exit? Are there any other exits? Master, I ordered people to investigate. This residence only has 2 entrances. There is also a dog hole on the side street. There is no other exit. Qin Yining nodded slightly. As they spoke, the carriage had already passed through this place. The carriage driver hesitated and slowed down, not knowing if he should turn around. Qin Yining said, "Don't look back. Go straight ahead. Take a few more day tours and go to the back of the residence to take a look." Hearing this, the coachman nodded and continued forward. The idlers guarding the alley and the men on both sides of the road noticed the carriage. When they saw that the carriage had gone far away, they let down their guard and thought that they were just passers-by. Qin Yining frowned and fell into deep thought. This place was indeed unusual. Based on the stature of the guards and Master Zhong's investigation, it was clear that the residence was inhabited by Taytan people. However, this was the capital after all, right under the emperor's nose. In addition, the capital's defenses were tight. How could no one have discovered that the Taytan were entrenched here? What's more, the Northern City Command Department of the Warden Office of the 5 Cities was in the Northern City Jushen Square, and the Water Dragon Bureau of the Northern City was also here. These 2 were official government offices of the Imperial Court. If the Taytan spies really lived here, would they choose a place that was close to the Northern City Command Department and the Water Dragon Bureau? Wouldn't that be exposing himself? However, Qin Yining saw that the people in the house were indeed Taytan people. The more he thought about it, the more suspicious he felt. At this time, the carriage had already made a long detour and returned to the back door of the house. The back wall of this house was obviously higher than the houses on both sides. Sure enough, there was a back door, but unlike the front door, there wasn't a man guarding it. Perhaps they were following the example of the neighbors, but there wasn't anyone guarding the back door. If they had sent someone to guard the door, it would be obvious that they were hiding something. This house looks like an ordinary house, but the defenses are as tight as an iron bucket. It's impossible to investigate. Master Zhong sighed and said, "I originally wanted to send someone to investigate, but I was afraid of alerting the enemy. It's not good to expose ourselves before we succeed." Qin Yining nodded and said, "Indeed, it's impossible to forcefully investigate this place. Think about it, this house is so close to the government office. The Warden Office of the 5 Cities is responsible for patrolling the city every day. How could they not know? If they knew and still allowed it, then there must be a deeper meaning." Master Zhong was a smart person. Before Qin Yining said half a sentence, he understood and his expression became serious. If that's the case, it's really not easy to investigate directly. Qin Yining nodded. For a moment, Qin Yining wanted to give up on investigating this matter. In any case, the Taytan had assassinated the emperor. The emperor would naturally send elites to investigate. But with the clues in hand, if he didn't continue to investigate, it was hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be more trouble in the future. The Taytan could assassinate Duchess Ding, her, and her father. Things wouldn't be so simple. Moreover, these people were still hiding in the capital and hadn't left. It meant that they had other missions. It was hard to guarantee that it wouldn't be the next assassination against her family. Thinking of this, Qin Yining gave up on the idea of retreating. Looking up, he happened to see a group of patrolling people from the Warden Office of the 5 Cities passing by. Qin Yining recognized the leader. It was Shu Maro, the commander of the East City of the 5 Cities Warden Office. Although Qin Yining wondered why Shu Maro would bring people to patrol the North City, he didn't think too much about it. Instead, he took the opportunity to stop the carriage, lifted the curtain, and gave a few instructions to Bing Tang. Bing Tang immediately understood and jumped down from the shaft of the carriage to go to Shu Maro. Master Zhong didn't understand and looked at Qin Yining questioningly. Qin Yining carefully observed Shu Mao's reaction. Not long after, Shu Maro followed Bing Tang to the front of the carriage. Qin Yining didn't act arrogantly. He lifted the curtain and nodded to Shu Maro. "Lord Shu, long time no see. So it's Miss Qin." Shu Mao's attitude towards Qin Yining was much more respectful than before. It was clear that Qin Huayuan's status was high after he was awarded the Marquis title for facilitating the peace talks. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Lord Shu, I'm sorry to have offended you so abruptly. Don't mention it. If Miss Qin has any orders, please don't hesitate to tell me." Qin Yining said, "Just now, I was passing by this place with my servant and accidentally dropped a gold bracelet inlaid with jade. The jade on the bracelet is of high quality and is worth a lot of money. I saw a tall man pick it up with my own eyes. My servant called out to him, but he ran like he was flying and entered this house with my bracelet." Qin Yining pointed to the courtyard where the Taitan people lived. "So, I would like to trouble you to help me find the bracelet." When Shu Maro heard that Qin Yining was asking him to help her find the bracelet, he felt a wave of disdain in his heart. As expected of a woman, she only knew about trivial matters. However, when he heard that the bracelet had been picked up by a man and that man had entered this house, his expression became serious. After thinking about it, Shu Maro smiled and said, "Miss Qin losing a bracelet is not a big deal. If you really like the bracelet, I'll buy one for you as compensation. However, this lowly official cannot search that residence. Not to mention Mrs. One-sided statement, even if there is other evidence, this lowly official does not have the right to search." When Qin Yining heard this, she said arrogantly, "But I clearly saw someone in that house pick up my bracelet. That bracelet is very valuable. Is Lord Shu still not willing to help me?" Shu Maro became impatient. "It's not that I don't want to help, but Cao Guozhong personally told me that the people living here are all important people and cannot be easily touched. I advise Miss Qin to behave." When Qin Yining heard Cao Guozhong's name, her heart skipped a beat. The arrogance on her face was replaced by fear. She said embarrassedly, "Forget it. It's just a gold bracelet. It's not a big deal." When Shu Maro saw that Qin Yining was tactful and did not make a fuss about her gold bracelet, he breathed a sigh of relief. He cupped his hands and continued to patrol. Qin Yining lowered the carriage's curtain and urged the others to leave quickly. They returned directly to Cloud treading in. Master Zhong and Qin Yining sat down in the main room. Qin Yining ordered Ji Yun and Bing Tang to stand guard outside. They could not allow anyone to come close and eavesdrop on their conversation. When only the two of them were left in the room, Master Zhong asked worriedly, "Boss, do you still want to continue investigating?" "Yes. Since these people have tried to assassinate us twice, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be a third or fourth time. How can I leave such a hidden danger behind?" Master Zhong nodded and said in agreement, "However, it's not easy to get rid of them. It's impossible to investigate them even if we want to." Qin Yining also felt that it was difficult. If they captured one person for interrogation, it wouldn't be difficult to capture that person. However, they didn't know if that person would commit suicide to prevent them from being interrogated. The consequences of alerting the enemy were not small. It would affect their future plans. What if he told his father about this? After all, his father was an official in the imperial court. There were many things that he couldn't do by himself. Moreover, if Qin Huayuan found out about this matter, the most likely thing he would do would be to report it directly to the emperor and have the emperor investigate. This place was also under the care of Cao Guozhong. The relationship was very complicated. It was unknown how the incapable emperor would deal with it. Without any evidence, his father might even be bitten back. He would definitely tell his father, but that would only happen after he had solid evidence that these people were Taitan spies. Otherwise, it would only be suspicion. It wouldn't be convincing. It would also make people suspect that his father was stirring up trouble. Thinking of this, Qin Yining's expression became serious. After thinking for a moment, Qin Yining suddenly asked, "Master Zhong, do we have people in the Water Dragon Bureau?" The Water Dragon Bureau was linked to the military department of the 5 cities. It was responsible for fighting fires in the city. Master Zhong seemed to understand something. His eyes lit up as he looked at Qin Yining. There is indeed a brother who collects night incense in the Water Dragon Bureau. Qin Yining was surprised when he heard this. Then, he laughed. Collecting night incense is good. The Zhaoyun Bureau is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. They have a wide network. How about this? I'll have to trouble Master Zhong to find this brother and prepare 300 taels of silver. After this matter is done, he won't need to collect night incense anymore. He can take the money and retire." Master Zhong nodded. "What arrangements does boss have?" Qin Yining then asked Manager Zhong to come closer and whispered the plan to him. Master Zhong nodded repeatedly as he listened. Finally, he said with emotion, "It's true that the voice of a young phoenix is clearer than that of an old phoenix. Boss is indeed the daughter of the wise Pan An. In terms of scheming, this old man admires you." Qin Yining blushed from the praise. He said, "Head shopkeeper, please don't say that. Everything I do depends on your help. It is my fortune that you are willing to help." "What are you saying? If it weren't for boss, who knows what would happen to my entire family? This old man will naturally listen to boss's orders." "Young lady, please don't worry. Just wait for a good show. Then I'll have to trouble Master Zhong to make arrangements. When the time comes, I'm afraid I won't be able to be there. I'll have to trouble Master Zhong to do everything according to my instructions." Master Zhong smiled and replied, "Boss, please don't worry. This old man is very familiar with this kind of matter." Qin Yining nodded and returned to the Fu, relieved. In the following 2 days, there was no news from the outside. The Sun Clan's health gradually improved. 2 days later, just as he woke up in the morning, Master Zhong sent a letter asking Qin Yining to check the accounts. Qin Yining hurriedly returned to the Sun Clan. He brought Bing Tang, Song Lan, and Ji Yun to Master Zhong's home. Chapter 152. Boss's orders have been properly deployed. We'll take action tonight. Does boss want to go and see for yourself? Master Zhong's eyes flashed with excitement. Of course I want to see such a wonderful scene. However, it's inconvenient for me to stay outside for a long time with my identity. Why don't I think of a way to get past my father? Qin Yining's white hand, which was wearing a hibiscus jade bracelet, rubbed the white porcelain teacup. Her pink and white fingernails lightly tapped the cup's wall. She suddenly smiled and said, "Forget it. My father is very resourceful. It's not wise for me to hide it from him or deceive him for the time being." Master Zhong nodded in agreement and said with a smile, "According to this old man's opinion, it's better for boss to directly tell the Marquis the truth. Otherwise, it'll be bad if there's a misunderstanding." "Exactly." Qin Yining then carefully confirmed a series of deployments with Master Zhong in a low voice before returning to the Fu. In the afternoon, Qin Yining brought Ji Yun to the outer courtyard study. Chi Tai was squatting next to a potted plant in the corridor, trimming the branches and leaves of a pot of jasmine tea. When she heard footsteps, she raised her head and saw Qin Yining. She hurriedly bowed and greeted, "Fourth Miss, is father here?" "The Marquis is here. This lowly one will go and report to the Marquis." Chi Tai put down the flower scissors and turned to lift the light blue bamboo curtain to enter the room. Not long after, she came out and respectfully invited Qin Yining in. The study was the same as before. Qin Huiyuan was wearing a light grey cotton shirt and sitting cross-legged on the ahut bed next to the window, reading a book. When he saw Qin Yining come in, he smiled and said, "Sister Yi, you're here. Sit down." Qin Yining sat down on the other side of the square table and waved her hand to dismiss the servants. Then she said, "Father, daughter has a good show to invite you to see." Qin Huiyuan looked up in surprise and put down the book. The blue cover had the words Suozhuan written on it. "Daughter's stage has been set up, and the actors have been found. Everything is ready, except for father, who is an audience. Do you want to go and watch with daughter?" Looking at the fox-like smile on Qin Yining's face, which was very similar to his when he was young, Qin Huiyuan couldn't help but laugh. "Come on, tell me, who are you plotting against this time?" In Ci Xiao Garden in the evening, old madam sat cross-legged on the ahut bed unhappily. She held a pipe with a brass and green jade mouth, but she didn't take a puff for a long time. The Sun Clan, second madam, and third madam stood at the side. Third miss, sixth miss, seventh miss, eighth miss, and Qin Huaining were all either standing or sitting by her side, trying to make old madam happy. "I'm also preparing to make the soft shoes that grandmother will wear in her room. I've already drawn the pattern. I'll bring it over for you to see later. If you don't like it, I'll change it. Qin Huaining held old madam's hand and said with a smile. Although old madam didn't treat Qin Huaining the same as before, she was much closer to her for Cao Yuqing's sake. Normally, she would have laughed, but now, she was still unhappy. She pushed away Qin Huaining's hand and casually handed the pipe to Mammy Qin, who was waiting on the side. What did he say? Why is he so busy? Why does he have to take Sister Yi out? How many days has it been since he came to pay his respects to me? I think he's almost forgotten that he still has me, his mother. How could that be? Others don't know how busy the Marquis is, but how could old madam not know? Mammy Qin persuaded with a smile. Qin Huaining also said, "That's right, grandmother, don't be angry. Besides, madam was sick a few days ago, so the Marquis should take care of madam more." Old madam glared at the Sun clan and coldly snorted. Although the Sun clan no longer had any expectations for Qin Huaining, they were also very disappointed to see her disregard their many years of friendship and continue to smear their reputation in front of old madam. However, she had always had an explosive temper, so how could she give in to others? Old madam, don't take it to heart. Not to mention that the Marquis is busy with government affairs, his family affairs are also limited. Besides, Sister Yi is more intelligent than others, and the Marquis likes her to resemble him. This daughter-in-law sees that the Marquis wants to teach Sister Yi like a boy. Perhaps he has some serious business today, so he must take Sister Yi out, so he might not have time to enter the second gate. Although the Sun clan was laughing, their words poked at old madam and Qin Huaining's hearts. Their son was focused on government affairs, and when he had free time, he would dote on Qin Yining and throw them to the back of his mind. However, the Sun clan wasn't wrong. Qin Yining was indeed similar to her father, so she was more worthy of being nurtured. Old madam snorted coldly, "You can open a dye shop with just a little bit of color. Fortunately, I raised a good daughter back then. I'm not as fortunate as old madam to have children and grandchildren around me. I only have Sister Yi as my daughter. If she's unfilial, who can I count on?" The Sun clan also sneered and looked at Qin Huaining mockingly. Qin Huaining bit her lip and lowered her eyes to hide her resentment. Sure enough, Qin Yining was her biological daughter. She wasn't considered a daughter of the Sun clan. Since the Sun clan was heartless, they couldn't blame her for being unrighteous. Qin Huaining lowered her head and looked wronged, but she already had an idea in her mind. Qin Yining and Qin Huayuan naturally didn't know about the argument in the prefectural magistrate. Qin Yining also didn't know that Qin Huayuan valued her and caused old madam and Qin Huaining to be jealous. In the middle of the night, just as the clock drum sounded, a house on Yongkang Street in Beijuxian district caught fire. Fortunately, this place was close to the Water Dragon Bureau and the military department of the 5 cities. Soon, people from the Water Dragon Bureau rushed over with a water wheel and rushed in to put out the fire. Unexpectedly, just as they sprayed water, the fire burned even more fiercely. It was as if a basin of hot oil had been poured on it. The people from the Water Dragon Bureau panicked when they saw this and hurriedly continued to spray water to put out the fire. However, the more they sprayed, the fiercer the fire became. Only then did they realize that something was wrong. They hurriedly checked the water wheel and found that someone had poured oil into the water wheel. Because oil was lighter than water, the layer of oil that had just been pumped out to put out the fire was actually oil. At this time, the remaining water in the water wheel still had a thin layer of oil floating on top of it. In this way, the accidental fire became deliberate arson. The people from the military department of the 5 cities and the Water Dragon Bureau were anxious. The fire that had been fueled by oil immediately spread throughout the inner courtyard. The fire was getting fiercer and fiercer. Although there was hope to put out the fire, the people in the courtyard couldn't just wait inside to be burned to death, right? Tall men in disheveled clothes continuously ran out of the courtyard. Indirectly, the screams of women could also be heard. Qin Yining and Qin Huayuan wore black cloaks and hid their bodies in the shadows of the back alley. Master Zhong ran over and whispered, "Boss, it's done." Qin Yining whispered, "Good, pay attention to the front and back alleys. Let our people not have a backup plan. Catch whoever comes out. First, Dislocate their lower jaws to prevent them from biting their tongues to commit suicide. If they run fast, simply break their legs. While they are busy putting out the fire, the people outside don't know. Catch these people and send them to the place we prepared in advance. Yes, boss, don't worry. Master Zhong rubbed his hands and walked quickly. Qin Huiyuan smiled and looked down at his daughter standing beside him. Let's go. Yes, father. The figures of the father and daughter quietly sneaked into the depths of the alley. Chapter 153. The fire at North Jushan Market was only extinguished in the early morning. But strangely, the houses next to the house were all empty. At most, only 1 or 2 people were left to look after the houses, so there were no casualties. What was even stranger was that there were only 4 people left in the house, and all of them were silent. The Water Dragon Bureau and the 5 cities warden's office had seen with their own eyes that no less than 30 men had run out of the house, but now they seemed to have disappeared overnight. Shu Maro and the others faintly sensed that something was wrong, and hurriedly sent a message to Cao Guozhong. Cao family. The servants in the outer courtyard were all sent to do other things by the housekeeper. The housekeeper stood in front of the courtyard door, and did not allow anyone to take half a step closer. Cao Guozhong's face was gloomy as he sat on a chair with a yellow rosewood official's hat. His thumb that was wearing a jade ring trembled slightly, revealing his anger. Sitting opposite him was a tall and voluptuous girl of 17 or 18 years of age with thick eyebrows and big eyes. The girl did not have an outstanding appearance, but her facial features were rather deep. She was wearing a bright red collar with peony flowers blooming on it, which set off her healthy, honey-colored skin. Her slightly curly long hair was tied into a bun. Although she was dressed like a lady from Great Yang's boudoir, she was emanating a stubborn and domineering aura from head to toe. She did not look like the delicate ladies of Great Yang. She was the Taitan Princess Ainari. Cao Guozhong, didn't you say that the house was the safest place in the world, and that you had arranged everything around it? Why are there only 4 of my 30 Taitan warriors left, and the rest have all disappeared? Ainari furrowed her brows in anger. Cao Guozhong, you must give this princess an explanation. Cao Guozhong laughed coldly. Princess, please calm down. This old man has indeed arranged all the security measures for the residence. I even spent a large sum of money to purchase several residences around the residence as cover. This old man has spent a lot of effort on this matter. Even if Princess Ainari can't see it clearly, young Master Si Qin should be able to see it clearly. Princess is so noisy. Could it be that you have something against this old man? Sitting next to Ainari, Si Qin, who was dressed like a scholar, pursed his thin lips and did not reply. His handsome face revealed a hint of anger. Cao Guozhong continued, as for what happened this time, it's obvious that your subordinates were too stupid. Even if they were caught, it's because they exposed their whereabouts. At this time, Princess should be thinking about how to deal with the aftermath instead of yelling at this old man here, right? Ainari was even more furious. He slammed the table. No matter how many arrangements you made, my warriors are all gone now. Back then, there were so many people from the Yang dynasty. We failed to assassinate you twice and lost so many warriors, but I was not angry. Our Taitan warriors are all eagles of the grassland. Even if they die in battle, they will return to the embrace of Tengri. But now, because of your carelessness, so many warriors went missing before they could even draw their swords, and you still blame the warriors this princess brought for being stupid? Isn't it stupid? If they weren't stupid, why would the house catch fire in the middle of the night? How could they have panicked when they were retreating and ended up being wiped out? Princess Ainari should be angry. If this old man had such useless subordinates, I'm afraid this old man would also be angry. I've long heard that you people in the Central Plains don't do practical things and only know how to talk. Today, this princess has seen it for myself. Compared to the princess's incompetence, this old man is a bit inferior. The princess's actions are treacherous, and this old man admits defeat. This old man gave the princess the spring painting garden out of goodwill, but I didn't expect the princess to give it to someone else. This old man hasn't even asked the princess what she meant by this, but the princess is already yelling in front of this old man. Seeing that Inari and Cao Guozhong were at loggerheads, and even implicated the Taitan and Daeju, Cai-Qin hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Cao Guozhong, please don't take it to heart. Her Highness is only concerned about the lives of these warriors. There is still a long way to go for cooperation in the future, so there's no need to hurt our relationship because of this. Cao Guozhong is right. The most important thing right now is to think about how to deal with the aftermath. Inari had accumulated a bellyful of anger and had nowhere to vent it, but after hearing Cai-Qin's words, it miraculously calmed down. Although its face was still full of anger, it didn't continue to speak rudely. Cao Guozhong's gaze shifted between Inari and Cai-Qin, and his expression softened slightly. These people wouldn't have disappeared for no reason. They must have been captured by someone. If it was someone else, then it would be fine, but if they were captured by the Emperor's people, then things would be difficult. When Cai-Qin heard this, his hawk-like sharp eyes flashed, but it was immediately replaced by a gentle smile. No matter who captured them, they're already considered useless, so there's no need to think about it anymore. In Cao Guozhong's opinion, if your country's emperor captured these people, how would he deal with them? Cao Guozhong raised his eyebrows. Cai-Qin's first half of his words meant that if they could be dealt with appropriately, then the missing people could be abandoned and treated as if they didn't exist. Surprisingly, the way this Tartar talked and acted was somewhat similar to the style of Great Yang. Cao Guozhong maintained his composure and said, "Young Master Cai-Qin, there's no need to test this old man. If the Emperor were to find out about this matter, then it would be difficult for both of us. However, if we want to deal with this properly, then with young Master Cai-Qin's words, this old man knows what to do. Guozhong, you're a smart person. It's always refreshing to talk to smart people." Cai-Qin smiled. When Inari saw Cai-Qin and Cao Guozhong talking cheerfully and wittily, her eyes couldn't help but become infatuated as she looked at his handsome face. Cai-Qin's sharp eyes looked over, but when they met with Inari's eyes, he suddenly withdrew all his sharpness and smiled at her. Inari felt as if she had fallen into a pool of warm water, and her entire body became dizzy. Cao Guozhong took in the two's expressions, but didn't pay them much attention. He called for his confidant and said in a low voice, "Go and call over the people we've arranged in the 5 cities military office and the Water Dragon Bureau. Regardless of whether we use coercion, bribery, or even torture, we must make these people spit out valuable information. These days, if anyone has passed by that residence, and if anyone has been acting strangely, don't let a single one of them go." This subordinate obeys. The subordinate accepted the order and left. Inari and Cai-Qin saw that Cao Guozhong had taken concrete action on this matter and were temporarily relieved. At this moment, Qin Yining and Qin Huayuan were sitting across from each other in the study of the outer courtyard of the Qin residence. Qin Huayuan was leaning against the Arhat bed by the window, while Qin Yining was sitting next to the footstool. Father and daughter were eating desserts and drinking tea as they analyzed the day's events. "I'll hand those people over to Father. Father, you can take care of the rest. I won't be involved." Qin Yining raised her teacup and drank a mouthful of hot tea, diluting the sweetness of the desserts. Qin Huayuan raised his eyebrows and said, "Father suspects that you're deliberately dragging me over to deal with the aftermath." Qin Yining laughed and said, "It is indeed to deal with the aftermath. Even if I capture them myself, I can't deal with them. I still have to hand them over to Father. These people will definitely be useful to Father." Qin Huayuan hadn't slept the entire night and was currently somewhat tired. Looking at Qin Yining's radiant and beautiful face, his smile deepened and he wanted to test her. Chapter 154. Daughter handed him over to Father precisely because I didn't want to be involved in this troublesome matter. Father, you're asking daughter instead. Qin Yining pretended not to comply, then smiled mischievously. Does Father intend to test daughter? If daughter answers well, will there be a reward? Qin Huayuan was amused by her rare mischievousness. He thought to himself, she's just a girl who hasn't reached marriageable age yet. She's usually calm and mature to the point of acting like an old man, but she's forced by the circumstances. The fondness and pity he felt for Qin Yining increased a bit. "You're so clever. You didn't learn to be steady while staying by your mother's side. Instead, You've learned to be more delicate and mischievous. Forget it. If you answer well, father still has a top-notch inkstone as a reward. How about it? Many thanks, father. Qin Yining smiled when she heard this. She patted the crumbs off her hands, wiped them clean, and took a sip of tea. Only then did she say, daughter thinks that there are 3 ways to deal with this matter: the best, the middle, and the worst. Qin Huayuan's eyes flashed, and a smile appeared on his face. Oh? Tell me about it. Qin Yining smiled and said, yes. These assassins had poison sacs in their mouths. Although each of them was unyielding and committed suicide, it's different from being caught in private without any preparation. Moreover, we've caught so many people at once. Under severe torture, it's possible that these 30 or so people are all unyielding. They'll definitely spit out the truth. Whatever they say, they'll definitely have to tell His Majesty. It's just that the method and timing of telling His Majesty is different. Qin Yining raised her eyes and saw Qin Huayuan nodding slightly. She felt a bit more confident. The worst way is that father directly takes these people's confessions and testifies Cao Guozhong in front of the imperial court. The advantage of doing this is that the whole world will know of Cao Guozhong's wild ambitions. His Majesty is committed to the peace talks, but Cao Guozhong actually colluded with the Taitan to destroy the peace talks. For His Majesty, his intentions are worthy of death. But if we do this, it's impossible to predict how things will develop in the future, Qin Huayuan said. Exactly. Qin Yining nodded, because we don't know what His Majesty thinks about Guozhong Cao. This method is too risky. If His Majesty favors Guozhong Cao, father will suffer a backlash. That's why daughter said that this method is a bad one. Yes. What you said makes sense. Qin Huayuan relaxed and leaned against the big pillow behind him. He said with a smile, what about the middle plan? The middle plan was that father privately went back to His Majesty and asked His Majesty's intentions towards Guozhong Cao. If His Majesty wanted to seize the opportunity to take down Guozhong Cao, then you would be His Majesty's sharp blade. If His Majesty wanted to keep it a secret, then you would just pretend that you didn't know about it. This is better than catching His Majesty off guard in public. When Qin Yining said this, she frowned and thought for a moment. Then she said, however, this method also has its drawbacks. Although we know His Majesty's intentions in advance, it's hard to guarantee that His Majesty won't go back on his word or be influenced by outside forces to suddenly change his mind. Therefore, father will easily become a target and will have to bear the consequences of this. Moreover, Guozhong Cao's henchmen are all over the court and have deep roots. Although father is already the Grand Preceptor, he still can't compete with him. The consequences of becoming Guozhong Cao's target can be imagined. Also, Empress Cao has lived in the palace for a long time. It's hard to guarantee that there won't be spies by His Majesty's side. If their people know about the conversation between father and His Majesty in advance, this plan will also be ruined. The more Qin Yining said, the more she felt that this method was dangerous. Her expression also became serious. If I can't escape unscathed because of His Majesty's loyalty, then it's a loss. Therefore, this middle plan is also not appropriate. Qin Huayuan saw that Qin Yining's analysis was thorough. She was clearly a young girl, but her comprehensive thinking was not inferior to those who had been immersed in the court for a long time. At this time, Qin Huayuan liked his daughter even more. He also lamented that she wasn't a son. If she was a boy, then he, Qin Huayuan, wouldn't have to worry about not having a successor. Qin Huayuan sighed and said, your analysis is very thorough. Father believes that the best plan most people can think of is to privately discuss this matter with His Majesty. However, there is a risk. After all, no one can predict a sudden change. Being praised by her father like this, Qin Yining blushed with embarrassment and joy. Her charming face flushed red and her eyes sparkled. Father praises me too much. I still have a better plan, but I think that with father's intelligence, you've already thought of it. Why don't we write it down together and see if we can think of the same thing? Qin Huayuan laughed, you little girl. All right, go and get a brush and paper. Qin Yining nodded and went to the large black painting table to grind the ink. She took a purple brush and dipped it in the thick ink. Then she took a piece of paper and handed it to Qin Huayuan. She took another piece of paper, turned her back to Qin Huayuan, and began to write on the painting table. For a moment, the only sounds in the room were the rustling of the brush on the paper and the swaying of the string of pearls on Qin Yining's head. The faint fragrance of the ink mixed with the fragrance of tea and pastries. The atmosphere was particularly peaceful and tranquil. After Qin Yining finished writing, Qin Huayuan also put down his brush. The two of them put the two pieces of paper together. Qin Huayuan's writing was free and easy, while Qin Yining's writing was graceful and neat. The content was the same 3 words, concubine cow. A sense of tacit understanding arose spontaneously in the hearts of the father and daughter. For a moment, Qin Huayuan felt that even if this person wasn't a boy, they were still his own flesh and blood, and his own daughter. It didn't matter if they were a boy or a girl. With her intelligence, she could still be his successor. Qin Yining smiled as she took the paper from Qin Huayuan's hand and threw the 2 pieces of paper into the charcoal brazier on the ground. The sparks flickered and the paper quickly curled up and turned into ashes. Give it to her and let her report to the emperor. Not only can we sell her a favor, but we can also clean up our family. Whether or not we deal with Cao Guo will depend on the emperor and Madame Cao. In any case, we didn't catch them, so we don't know anything. Qin Yining smiled slyly and said, the emperor has been tracking down the assassin for a long time. The silver-masked secret agents naturally have this mission as well. They are called secret agents. If they don't even have the ability to catch someone, where will they put their face? Madame Cao isn't a muddle-headed person. She will definitely take credit for this and bear all the risks for us. Clever. Qin Huayuan's index finger scratched the tip of Qin Yining's nose. Aren't you afraid that concubine Cao won't agree? She is the emperor's secret agent. She was ordered to catch the assassin. Now that there is a clue, how could she refuse? Besides, even if she has the heart to refuse, as long as father personally tells her, she will definitely agree. When Qin Huayuan heard this, his expression became a bit awkward. He coughed and said, little girl, you're full of nonsense. Seeing that you've helped father a lot, I'll take that Fang Shi Yang as your reward. Qin Yining smiled happily, thank you, father. Father, quickly show it to me. Qin Huayuan was amused by her and laughed loudly. What's the hurry? Do you think father will renege on a debt? Qin Huai went down to the ground and called for Qi Tai to come in. Go find the Shi inkstone that I just got a few days ago and deliver it to the 4th miss. Oh, that's right. Also deliver that small box and brush to the 4th miss. Qi Tai nodded repeatedly and went to get the things with a smile. Qin Yining giggled, thank you, father. I didn't sleep last night and father must be tired. Why don't we go back together? You can go back to Xingning Garden to catch up on sleep. I'll also go back to the master's study to wait for my Fang Shi Yang and brush. Qin Huayuan was in a good mood. He casually put on a robe with large sleeves and said, let's go. Father will take you to pay respects to the old madam first. Then we'll go separately to catch up on sleep. Qin Yining couldn't help but be moved by Qin Huayuan's attentiveness. Qin Yining naturally knew that Qin Huayuan hadn't gone to see the old madam for many days. Ever since the snuff bottle incident, Qin Huayuan had been cold to the old madam. Qin Huayuan naturally knew that the snuff bottle incident wasn't true and that Qin Yining had deliberately scared the old madam. However, Qin Huayuan still used his coldness to show his attitude in front of the old madam. He was telling the old madam that Qin Yining and the Sun Clan were people that Qin Huayuan cared about. This really couldn't help but make Qin Yining feel moved. When he first returned home, Qin Yining felt that his father was easygoing on the surface but cold on the inside. However, after getting along with him for a long time, Qin Yining naturally knew that his father was good to him. Thinking about it, this kind of person who was resourceful wasn't easy to make friends with. However, after making friends with him, he wouldn't easily alienate him. Qi Tai found an inkstone and a box of brushes and gave them to Ji Yun. Qin Yining took Ji Yun and followed Qin Huayuan all the way to the inner residence. Who knew that as soon as they entered the Chuehua gate, they heard what seemed to be a woman's cries and shouts from Ci Xiao Garden not far away? Qin Huayuan's expression changed, and he hurriedly walked over. Qin Yining also felt that something was amiss. He called Ji Yun and quickly followed behind Qin Huayuan. The closer they got to Ci Xiao Garden, the more obvious the cries and shouts became. Qin Yining was alarmed when he heard it. The people who were shouts and shouts were actually from the Sun Clan. The one who was crying and begging for mercy seemed to be Qin Huayuan. What exactly happened? She hadn't been home for one night and didn't have time to pay respects to the Sun Clan. How did something happen? In the courtyard, Mother Jin and Cai Ju supported the Sun Clan on either side. The Sun Clan's face was already covered in tears, but she still pointed at Qin Huayuan and said, "You heartless bastard with a broken conscience. What good can you get by slandering me?" Qin Huayuan fell to the ground and sobbed loudly. However, his refuting voice became even clearer. "Madam, why do you have to be like this? That voodoo doll wasn't found in my room. I originally went to give Madam some snacks with good intentions, but Madam, how can I hide this kind of thing? That's the old Madam's birth date and horoscope. Right now, the old Madam has fainted from anger and we don't know what's going on. However, Madam only knows how to shout at me. If Madam is really filial, why didn't you worry about the old Madam? You're actually in a hurry to refute." Qin Huayuan turned around and interrupted Qin Huayuan with a frown. "What voodoo doll are you talking about?" "Marquis." Everyone in the courtyard bowed in unison. Chapter 155. The Sun Clan was angry and anxious. In addition, she had just recovered from a cold and her body was still weak. Before Qin Yining and Qin Huayuan returned, she could still force herself to be strong. Now that she saw Qin Yining, relying on and trusting her had become a habit. Just being questioned like this made her eyes warm and tears fall from her eyes. "Sister Yi." Qin Yining hurriedly took out a handkerchief to wipe the Sun Clan's tears. She then asked Mother Jin, what exactly happened? When Mother Jin saw that Qin Yining and Qin Huayuan had returned, her hanging heart finally relaxed. She said, "This morning, Miss Huaining brought rice porridge and side dishes that she personally cooked to serve Furan breakfast." Furan remembered their previous mother-daughter relationship and allowed her to bring a maidservant in. However, who knew that when Miss Huaining brought along a maidservant to help Cai Ju tidy up the bedding and cushions, she suddenly found a voodoo doll under the Arhat bed. That doll had needles inserted into it, and old Madam's birth characters were written on it. Miss Huaining cried and took that doll to complain to old Madam. At this point, Mother Jin looked at Qin Huaining with eyes full of resentment. This servant had already told Furan that this was an ungrateful wretch who turned hostile and refused to recognize her. However, Furan still remembered their many years of mother-daughter relationship and actually let her in. When Furan was about to be beheaded, she didn't show any concern for her. When Furan was bedridden, she didn't attend to her. Yet, she came to deliver breakfast for no reason. In the end, this kind of thing happened. She clearly deliberately framed Furan. At this time, Qin Huaining was already kneeling in front of Qin Huayuan. She cried, "Father, please understand. What reason do I have to harm Mother? Even if I'm not Mother's biological daughter, I'm still the daughter of the eldest branch. Even if Mother is biased towards Sister Yi, I still have enough to eat and wear. I have no reason to harm Furan. Moreover, Father, do you think I'm that stupid? You've just brought people over, and you're already asking my people to frame you. Isn't this just putting a bucket of shit on your head? Father, please believe me. I'm not that stupid." Qin Huaining's teary eyes were full of grievance and innocence. Her fingers gripped the hem of Qin Huayuan's robe. She was clearly sobbing, but she forced herself to calm down. Her appearance was truly pitiful and made people feel pity for her. Qin Huayuan frowned and pulled away the hem of his robe that had been pulled by Qin Huaining. He quickly walked up the stairs and asked, "How is old Madam? Have you called for a doctor?" Ji Xiong said, "A doctor has been invited just now. Miss Bing Tang, who is by fourth young Mrs. side, also came to take a look at old Madam. She said that old Madam is old and her anger has attacked her heart. There are no major problems." Only then did Qin Huayuan feel relieved. He quickly walked to the inner chamber to see the old Madam. Qin Yining also helped Sun Clan into the room and said, "Mother, don't worry. Leave everything to your daughter. Sun Clan nodded. After feeling wronged, there was only anger left. I'm really stupid. She doesn't recognize me as her mother at all. She already recognized me as her foster mother after Madame Cow entered the family. However, I still thought that since we've been mother and daughter for 14 years, no matter how unfilial she is, there are still some feelings between us. Who knew that she would harm me like this? Sun Clan's words were filled with anger and sadness. Second Madam and Third Madam were also mothers. After hearing her words, they felt a chill run down their spines when they thought that the child they raised would use witchcraft to harm them. They looked at Qin Huaining with disdain. Bing Tang had just finished performing acupuncture on the old madam, and she was already slowly waking up. Seeing that Qin Yining had returned, Bing Tang tidied up and stood behind his master. The old madam stared at the people surrounding the bed in a daze for a long time. When she realized that Qin Huayuan had returned, she immediately started crying with grievance. You still know to come back. Your wife planned to kill me. You were busy with the imperial court and didn't have time to take care of your mother. Now, you came back in time. Mother, please calm down. Qin Huayuan took the teacup that Mammy Qin brought over. He helped the old madam sit up with one hand and fed the old madam the warm water with the other. He gently persuaded, it's your son's negligence. There have been many things going on outside these days. Da Ju's envoy is in the capital. In addition, there were some matters after the successful peace talks. Your son was so busy that his feet didn't touch the ground. It wasn't that I didn't come to pay respects to mother on purpose. Mother, please forgive me. Qin Huayuan was the old madam's favorite son. Hearing his explanation and thinking about his difficulties in the imperial court, the old madam actually understood very well in her heart. Her anger subsided a little. Looking over Qin Huayuan's shoulder, she saw Qin Yining helping the Sun Clan to sit down on a round-backed chair. The old madam suddenly became furious. Brother Meng, I know that you are filial. If you are really raised by me today, then you should divorce that poisonous woman from the Sun Clan. Qin Huayuan's brows furrowed again. Mother, please calm down. Calm down? How can I calm down? The Sun Clan bears a grudge against me and made a voodoo doll to curse me to death. If it wasn't for Sister Hui coincidentally bumping into them, I wouldn't even know when I would die one day. Your wife is not only a hen that can't lay eggs, but she is also unvirtuous, unfilial, and vicious. If you still recognize me as your mother, then divorce her immediately. In this family, if there is her, then there is me. If there is me, then there is her. The old madam roared until her face and ears turned red. She couldn't help but slap the edge of the bed. The gold-studded jadeite ring on her finger knocked against the wooden edge of the bed, making a loud noise that made people's hearts tighten. When the Sun Clan heard the old madam's heartless words, tears fell down again. She sat on the round-backed chair and only felt that her hands were numb. Her vision darkened. She weakly leaned on Qin Yining, who was standing beside her, and sobbed uncontrollably. When did she, Sun Haihan, fall to such a state and be forced into such a situation by her mother-in-law, who used to curry favor with her? Her maternal family had indeed fallen and had no value to the old madam. However, when the family Qin got involved in this marriage, did her father and brothers help to Qin Huayuan disappear? Even if she was an actress or a whore, she wouldn't be as heartless as the old madam. Fortunately, Qin Huaining was the granddaughter that the old madam was most proud of in the past. Now, it seemed that many of Qin Huaining's selfish economic knowledge were the same as the old madam's. She was really a failure. She couldn't teach a good daughter and couldn't win the hearts of others. Qin Yining saw that the Sun Clan's face was getting uglier and uglier. Her fingers were cramping from crying. He was so scared that he hurriedly called for Bing Tang. Quickly take a look at my mother. Bing Tang hurriedly held the Sun Clan's hand and pressed on her acupuncture points. Furen's heart is being attacked by anger. Her heart palpitations are acting up. Qin Yining's good mood from accomplishing a big thing disappeared without a trace. No matter who it was, seeing their mother being bullied to this extent, they wouldn't leave it at that. She knew that her father must have a way to persuade the old madam. However, this temporary peace obtained by persuasion only made people more suffocated. Qin Yining gritted his teeth and looked at Qin Huaining. When everyone was unprepared, He pounced forward and punched Qin Huaining in the eye. Ah! Qin Huaining screamed in pain. Before everyone could react, Qin Yining had already grabbed Qin Huaining's collar and pressed him to the ground. He didn't care about his image and started punching and kicking him. At this moment, Qin Yining only had one thought in his mind. Kill this ungrateful dog. Chapter 156. Qin Huaining didn't expect that Qin Yining would dare to hit her in front of Qin Huayuan. She wasn't as strong as Qin Yining and was being beaten by him. His fists were like iron hammers landing on her head and face. In pain and annoyance, Qin Huaining also fought back with all her strength. Her hands scratched wildly and her mouth cursed, "You wild hussy, stop. You dare to be impudent in front of father. Stop, don't hit my face. Ah, help." The hysterical curses finally turned into a miserable howl like a pig being slaughtered. Old Madam, who had been stunned by Qin Yining's actions, finally regained her senses and hurriedly called out, "Quickly stop her, quickly." Mammy Qin and the others received the order and hurriedly went over to stop her. However, Ji Yun, who had been silently following Qin Yining, came forward to stop them. Mammy Qin knew that this maidservant was given to Qin Yining by Prince Zhongshuren. It was said that she was a martial artist, so her movements were a little sluggish. On the other hand, the sixth young mistress, who had been stunned, was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. She called 4 to 5 sturdy older female servants from outside and wanted to stop Qin Yining. Ji Yun stretched out her arms to stop the people brought by the sixth young mistress. The older female servants naturally didn't put a delicate maidservant in their eyes. They intended to show off in front of the sixth young mistress and old madam, so they naturally rolled up their sleeves and exposed their arms and wanted to come forward. Unexpectedly, Ji Yun only went back and forth a few times. Before they felt any pain, they were already sitting on the ground. Ji Yun said with a smile, "If you want to harm the fourth young mistress, you have to go through me first." Who wanted to harm the fourth young mistress? It was clearly the fourth young mistress who wanted to kill someone. The older female servants hesitated and didn't dare to go forward. Qin Yining grabbed Qin Huaining's hair with his left hand and pressed his knee against her back, pinning her to the ground. Qin Huaining found it hard to breathe from the pressure. He raised his neck with all his might and tried to pry Qin Yining's hands away with both hands. His face, which was full of bruises, was revealed. Old Madam saw that her people were all stopped by Ji Yun. Qin Huaining was about to be beaten to death by Qin Yining. However, the people at the side were like wooden blocks and couldn't stop her. She was so angry that she pounded the edge of the bed. "Stop, you wild hussy, stop. Are you not going to listen to me anymore? Old Madam, don't forget about the snuff bottle. Don't forget how you bullied my mother. Anyway, I'm just a cheap life. At worst, we'll just reveal the truth and fight to the death." When Old Madam heard about the snuff bottle, she was so frightened that she didn't dare to open her mouth. When she met Qin Yining's knife-like gaze, the hair on her back stood on end. Old Madam immediately pulled Qin Huayuan's arm. "She's your daughter. Why don't you take care of her? Are you just going to let her kill people here?" Qin Huayuan also felt that Qin Yining's actions weren't very good. He even used the fact that Qin Yining fabricated the snuff bottle to threaten Old Madam. Old Madam was helpless, so he said, "Sister Yi, stop. Daughter naturally has to listen to father's words. Daughter will say a few more words." Qin Yining grabbed Qin Huaining's hair and pulled it up. Qin Huaining immediately screamed and leaned her neck back. She was forced to meet Qin Yining's expression, which looked like he wanted to eat her. She was so frightened that her heart turned cold. "Qin Huaining, I told you not to try to hurt my mother. Did you forget?" I. Qin Huaining was so frightened that her voice trembled. She couldn't say a single word. She knew that Qin Yining would kill her. He would definitely kill her. What's going on with that voodoo doll? You want to say it now, but I don't want to hear it. That doll's cloth, what was stuffed inside, what kind of needle and thread was used, what kind of ink was used to draw the birth characters, and even the font. There are discrepancies in the contents of the birth characters. There are so many clues that can be investigated. I believe that father and old madam will definitely investigate it thoroughly. Even if you don't say anything, they will still find out who did it. Qin Huaining's body trembled, and her teeth began to chatter. Qin Yining leaned close to her ear and said, "If you don't cherish your fortune, I will send you to the place you belong. Don't you feel that you have too little and aren't satisfied? I will send you back to your biological parents and leave you with nothing." Qin Huaining suddenly widened her eyes and stared at Qin Yining in horror. Qin Yining sneered and said, "Don't worry, I won't kill you. If I kill you, it will dirty my hands and dirty my family Qin's place. It will be too easy for you. I still want to keep you and let you enjoy your life." Qin Yining let go of Qin Huaining's hair and slowly stood up. "What's going on with that voodoo doll? Only an idiot wouldn't understand. If anyone believes that my mother made that doll, it can only mean that that person deliberately targeted my mother and deliberately used this matter as an excuse." Old madam was so angry that her face turned ashen. Qin Yining went to support the Sun Clan's hand. He was no longer as ruthless as a yakshaw when he beat people up. His tone was so gentle that it could cause water to come out of it. "Mother, are you feeling better?" The Sun Clan had already recovered. She was moved to tears by Qin Yining's forceful means of standing up for her. "I'm fine. Let's go back." The Sun Clan took Qin Yining's hand and saw that her palm had been scratched by the hairpin and was bleeding in 2 places. There were also bruises and broken skin on her knuckles. She frowned in distress and said, "You have a pair of good hands. How could you end up like this?" "This is nothing. I met a wolf in the mountains. The skin on my arms and back was scratched by the wolf's claws. Aren't I fine now?" Qin Yining said it casually, but Qin Huaining, who was lying on the ground, trembled even more violently. "Father, old madam, my mother is tired. I will accompany her back to Xingning Garden first. The matter of witchcraft involves old madam. Old madam, it's better for old madam to carefully investigate who is the one who really made the doll. If you let go of the person who really cursed you, then you're not responsible for yourself." Old madam was already depressed, and Qin Yining's words made her feel even more depressed. "In addition, old madam, you don't have to keep mentioning the matter of divorcing me. Old madam, you can ask my father for his opinion. If he wants to divorce me, then divorce me. I will take care of my mother myself. It's not to the extent that I can't live without you." Qin Yining turned around to support the Sun Clan and said, "Mother, let's go." When the Sun Clan heard Qin Yining's words, her nose turned sour. She immediately burst into tears and followed Qin Yining out of the room while wiping her tears. She was like an aggrieved child who had found her family. Second madam and third madam, who were watching the whole process, saw old madam blinking her eyes and being unable to say a word. They also saw Qin Yining forcefully supporting the Sun Clan and leaving. They felt very envious in their hearts. Even if the Sun Clan didn't have a son, having such a daughter was equivalent to having a son. Qin Huayuan didn't sleep last night. After being tormented like this, he felt very helpless towards his mother. He took the doll that Mammy Qin handed over and looked at it. Then, he casually handed it to old madam. He pointed at the birth characters on the ugly doll and immediately said, "Someone, call Chitai in." "Yes." The maidservant in the corridor quickly went out to call for Chitai. Qin Huaining raised his head with his face covered in blood and bruises. He looked at Qin Huayuan in horror. Chapter 157. Qin Huayuan sat tiredly at the old madam's bedside, his back leaning against the bedpost. As he waited for Chitai's arrival, he didn't want to look at Qin Huaining, much less say a word to Qin Huaining. Qin Huaining curled up on the ground. Every breath seemed to pull at the wounds on her skin and flesh. She was in so much pain that tears streamed down her face. She looked pleadingly at Qin Huayuan, hoping that Qin Huayuan would show some concern. However, Qin Huayuan didn't say a word. On the side, second madam, third madam, and the young ladies of the second and third branches were all silent out of fear when they saw this situation. They wanted to leave, but they were afraid of offending the old madam. If they didn't leave, they felt that it wasn't wise to get involved in the eldest branch's rotten debt. While they were in a dilemma, A maidservant came back and forth from the corridor. Marquis, Chitai is here. Let him in. Qin Huiyuan stood up and walked to the screen with his hands behind his back. After Chitai entered, he didn't go to the inner room. Instead, he stood outside the screen with his head down and listened to orders. Marquis. There are 3 things. First, tidy up my manor in the suburbs and order people to guard it strictly. Huining's daughter is infected with an epidemic. Send all of Snow Pear Courtyard's master and servants to quarantine. No one is allowed to visit without my permission. Second, investigate the origin of the voodoo doll. Once it's confirmed who did it and how they framed it, there's no need to come back to me. Directly chop off their hands and send them to the authorities. Third, contact the Health Preservation Hall. Continue to investigate the matter that was put on hold. Yes. Chitai swiftly responded and turned to leave. The room was silent. Everyone looked at Qin Huiyuan and Qin Huining with complicated and difficult to distinguish expressions. As soon as Qin Huining heard Qin Huiyuan's first sentence, her body was already trembling like a leaf in the wind. When she heard the last sentence from the Health Preservation Hall, she was already sweating like rain. Father, father. She thought she was shouting very loudly, but her voice was like a mosquito's buzzing. She could only tremble as she grabbed Qin Huiyuan's robe. Father, I'm your daughter, the daughter you've raised for 14 years. Now that you've found Qin Yining, why don't you care about me anymore? I have not contracted any disease, so why do you want to send me to the farmstead to avoid the disease? I won't go, I won't go. If I go, I won't come back. I won't go. Qin Huiyuan looked down at Qin Huining. His voice was so calm that it didn't seem to contain any anger. Sister Hui, you really disappoint me. Qin Huining abruptly raised his head and met Qin Huiyuan's serene face, his eyes as deep as the ocean. For a moment, she only felt that everything about her had been seen through. It was as if she had been stripped naked and paraded on the streets. I didn't. I was framed. I didn't make the doll, it wasn't me. Although you're not my daughter, you've grown up in front of me for 15 years. I understand your character. There's no need for you to quibble now. Since you feel that my family Qin has treated you badly and unfairly, then you should leave the family Qin. Since you feel that my wife isn't worthy of being your mother, then you shouldn't call me father in the future. As for the person who made the voodoo doll, it better not be you. If it was you, I'm afraid that you'll lose your hands in the future, and your life will be very difficult. Qin Huiyuan's announcement came out of nowhere. Although his voice was as calm as water, it still formed a perilous wave in Qin Huining's life. All the honor and glory that she had piled up and hidden in the past were washed away. Qin Huining suddenly realized how stupid she had been. In the face of Qin Huiyuan's absolute authority, everything that she had managed was nothing more than a fortress made of sand. While she was feeling complacent, others could destroy it at any time with a single wave. Father, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I didn't feel that the family Qin had treated me badly. I just couldn't accept. You couldn't accept it. You were jealous. You felt that Sister Yi had taken everything away from you, right? Qin Huiyuan asked gently. Qin Huining was speechless for a moment. Qin Huiyuan said, You were indeed innocent when you were brought here, but do you know what your original family was like? Qin Huining was sweating profusely. Sure enough, they had found her original family a long time ago. Otherwise, Qin Yining wouldn't have been so certain just now. Did they want to send her away a long time ago? You took Sister Yi's position and enjoyed 14 years of wealth, yet you feel that you're innocent. The one who was truly innocent was Sister Yi. She was the one who had her happy life taken away from her. You were the one who was saved from trouble. You were very smart, but you were too smart and too selfish. You only felt that you were innocent when you were brought here, but you didn't think that the wealth you received in my family Qin was compensation from the heavens. Father, I was wrong. Don't send me away. Since you call my wife Madam, then you can call me Marquis. Qin Huiyuan said, My family Qin has treated you well, yet you don't know how to be grateful. You don't remember your mother's kindness in raising you. It's really disappointing. You can go to the farmstead and stay there for a while. When the matter of the voodoo doll is resolved, I will let you meet your biological parents. Don't you feel that the family Qin has been hard on you? At that time, if you want to go back to your own family, then you can go back. After Qin Huayuan finished speaking, he took out the robe that was tightly held by Qin Huaining. He cupped his hands towards the matriarch and said, "Mother, your son hasn't slept all night. I'm going to sleep for a while." The matriarch had already been shocked to the extreme by Qin Huayuan's words. After listening carefully, she felt that his words were reasonable. Although she didn't like Qin Yining, because she was too smart and hard to control. However, she deeply abhorred Qin Huaining's ingratitude. Listening to Qin Huayuan's meaning, he planned to send Qin Huaining away. The matriarch frowned as she looked at the person lying on the ground and crying bitterly. Thinking that this granddaughter had been by her side since she was young, she couldn't bear it. Mengji let's postpone the matter of Yangsheng Hall. Qin Huaining only cared about crying. When he heard the matriarch's words, he suddenly remembered that his grandmother could suppress his father. For a moment, his heart was full of hope. He rolled and crawled to the front of the bed and continuously kowtowed to the matriarch. "Grandmother, save me. I don't have an epidemic disease. I won't go to the farmstead. Grandmother, I didn't make a doll to harm you. I'm innocent." The matriarch rubbed her aching forehead. Qin Huayuan had already taken a step forward and said, "The matter of avoiding the disease must be done. I can't tolerate a disorderly child being raised at home. As for the matter of voodoo, if someone really intends to harm the matriarch, I definitely won't tolerate it. Let's leave it like this." Under Qin Huayuan's unyielding decision, the matriarch didn't have any leeway to refute. When she thought that Qin Huaining might really make a voodoo doll to harm her in order to harm the Sun Clan and Qin Yining, the matriarch's heart felt cold. "Forget it. Let's do as the Marquis says." The matriarch said in a clear voice, "Lu Juan, take some people to help Huaining tidy up." Mammy Qin secretly sighed in relief and smiled in response, "Yes." Finally, this shit-stirrer was sent away. They, the servants, could also live some peaceful days. Qin Huaining stood up with the help of the servants. His legs were as soft as noodles. The people from the second branch and third branch, including the sixth young miss, who was usually the closest to Qin Huaining, couldn't intervene in the matriarch's matter at this time. Qin Yining and the Sun Clan were in Xingning Garden. When they heard that people from Shuili Courtyard had been sent to the farmstead, they were truly shocked. Chapter 158. Qin Yining could hear that the Sun Clan was still sighing and pained, so he just smiled. People's hearts were made of flesh. Qin Yining naturally knew that it was impossible for the Sun Clan to not have the slightest bit of pity for Qin Huaining. After all, she had been raised as her own daughter for more than 10 years. Although she was angry and disappointed, even if the child was wrong, the mother-daughter relationship could not be easily erased. Qin Yining didn't want to say much about this matter. Now that her father couldn't bear Qin Huaining and punished her, there was no need for her to trouble the people of Zhaoyun Agency. If Qin Huaining could play her part in the future, she would treat her as a stranger. If Qin Huaining provoked her again, she would not tolerate it. Seeing Qin Yining sitting on the side with her eyes down and letting Bing Tang apply medicine and bandage her hand without saying anything, Mother Jin was afraid that she would misunderstand the Sun Clan and cause a rift between mother and daughter, so she hurriedly said, "Madam, don't worry. The Marquis naturally has his own principles. Besides, Huaining really went too far this time. Even if she is sent to the country estate to reflect on her mistakes for a period of time, it won't be considered a heavy punishment." The Sun Clan nodded, her expression full of sorrow. "I'm not worried about her. With her character, she will never let herself be at a disadvantage. I just feel that now that I have seen the true nature of so many people, I feel that I have lived for decades in vain. I never knew that there would be people in this world who would treat others like this. Even if not everyone has a kind heart, in the end, they won't have evil intentions." Qin Yining saw the Sun Clan sighing with emotion. Her eyes were as confused as a child who couldn't figure things out. He couldn't help but sigh. In fact, his mother wasn't a bad person. It was just that she had been pampered for many years and had been protected too well. In addition, Her family used to be tough and didn't give the old madam a chance to show her true nature. It's not a bad thing to be able to see these people and things clearly now, isn't it? Qin Yining held the Sun Clan's hand with his uninjured left hand. When the members of the Sun Clan thought of how Qin Yining had risked his life to protect them today, they were moved. They smiled and held Qin Yining's hand, nodding gently. "Miss, I've applied the ointment. Don't let it get wet for the next 2 days. After the scab comes off, apply the scar removal ointment that I specially made. I guarantee that your hand will be as good as new." Bing Tang smiled and put away the white porcelain medicine box. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Thank you very much." "You're welcome." Miss Bing Tang retreated to the side with a smile. In the past, the members of the Sun Clan didn't like Qin Yining, so they also disliked the people around him. Now that they understood Qin Yining and hated the Cow family and the incapable ruler, the Sun Clan felt a sense of kinship when they looked at Bing Tang. In addition, Bing Tang had treated her several times, so the Sun Clan also became very gentle and polite to Bing Tang. With Miss Tang by Sister Yi's side, I can rest assured. I also have to thank you for taking care of our Sister Yi. Madam, what are you saying? It's this servant's duty to serve. Miss Bing Tang smiled and bowed. When the members of the Sun Clan heard her call herself a servant, they sighed. She was considered lucky. Although her family was destroyed, at least her mother and sister-in-law were still alive. She also had a husband that she could rely on and a daughter that was capable. Bing Tang was truly pitiful. Her family was gone, and as the daughter of a wealthy family, she still had to be a servant. Thinking of this, the members of the Sun Clan felt even more pity for Bing Tang. They took her hand and said, "In the future, you can stay by Sister Yi's side. The two of you can take care of each other. If you want to eat or use anything, just tell me. If you lack anything, you can also come directly to Mother Jin. In short, just treat this as your home." Bing Tang was somewhat flattered. To tell the truth, she secretly looked down on this idiotic madam. She only felt some sympathy for the fate of the Sun Clan. Now that the Sun Clan had come to their senses and were treating her so kindly, Bing Tang immediately knew why. She smiled and politely agreed. Just as the atmosphere in the room was warm, the voice of a servant girl in the corridor came to their ears. "The Marquis has returned." The curtain was lifted and Qin Huayuan entered. The members of the Sun Clan and Qin Yining both stood up and saluted in unison. Qin Huayuan waved his hand and said, "There's no need to be so formal at home." Qin Yining calculated the time and knew that Qin Huayuan should have gone to find Cao Yuqing and settled the matter of the Taiten before returning. After not sleeping last night, and after what happened in the morning, Qin Yining felt tired. Presumably, Qin Huayuan was even more tired. She smiled and said, "Daughter will take her leave first." The members of the Sun Clan smiled and nodded. She instructed Mother Jin to send them off, while she helped Qin Huayuan change his clothes. Qin Yining led Ji Yun and Bing Tang all the way to the Shuoran pavilion. When they passed by the back garden, they heard a commotion and crying in front of the Chuehua gate not far away. Looking carefully, they saw that it was Cao Yuqing and Qin Huaining. "Adoptive mother, I beg you, I don't want to go out. I'm not sick, I'm not infected. Adoptive mother, please tell father. As long as you say it, father will definitely listen." Qin Huaining knelt in front of Cao Yuqing, crying pitifully. Cao Yuqing's voice was very helpless. "Get up. You've done such a wrong thing. Even the Marquis has spoken. There's no room for anyone else to plead for leniency. I did it for adoptive mother." Qin Huaining didn't expect Cao Yuqing to flatly refuse, so her tone was somewhat anxious. When Cao Yuqing heard this, her beautiful face turned cold. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Miss Huaining, please be careful with your words. What do you mean by for me? Could it be that I was the one who asked you to murder the old madam?" Qin Huaining realized that she had blurted out something and hurriedly tried to explain. Cao Yuqing's patience had run out. She led her people past her and headed straight for the second door. Qin Huaining fell to the ground and helplessly looked at Cao Yuqing's back. She covered her mouth and sobbed bitterly. Right now, she really regretted it so much that her intestines were about to turn green. If it wasn't for the fact that her plan wasn't thorough enough, She wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Suddenly, Qin Huaining felt a chill run down her spine, as if someone was using a knife to scrape the hair on her back. She suddenly turned around and saw Qin Yining leading Ji Yun and Bing Tang to the back garden. They were standing at the fork in the road that led to the Soaring pavilion. Qin Yining was dressed lightly, but her bright and beautiful face made her feel disgusted just by looking at her. She looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. Her mockery almost turned into a sharp blade that crushed what little self-esteem she had left. Qin Huaining's face suddenly turned red. Just as she was about to speak, Qin Yining had already turned around and left. Her cold glance was like a kind of charity to her. "Miss Huaining, please leave. Don't make things difficult for us servants." Mammy Qin had already become impatient from waiting on the side with her people. Qin Huaining's face had been swept to the ground. She hated that she couldn't just bang her head against the wall and die, but she forced herself to raise her chin and proudly lead her people out of the Chuehua gate. The people from Snow Pear Courtyard who had been sent out with her all had gloomy expressions on their faces. They spat at Qin Huaining's back several times. Qin Huaining heard it, but could only pretend not to know. At the same time, in Fengyi Palace, the Empress had dismissed the palace servants. She lowered her voice and asked Cao Guizhong, "Father, why did you suddenly enter the palace to see this Empress? Did something big happen at home?" Cao Guizhong said in a low voice, "It's not a big deal, but it's not a small matter either. I'm afraid that the matter between us and the Titan will be leaked." Chapter 159. Cao Guizhong looked around to make sure the palace doors were closed and no one was spying. Then he said in a low voice, "Has Nyang heard about the big fire in North Jushen Market?" The Empress shook her head blankly. With her temperament and position, if she didn't intentionally spy or someone else deliberately told her, how could a fire that seemed normal to the outside world reach her ears? Cao Guizhong then said, "Last night, the residence where we arranged for those people caught fire. The Water Dragon Bureau's people went to put out the fire, but the water sprayed out from the water wheel turned into oil. The fire grew bigger and bigger. Just as the 5 cities warden's office and the Water Dragon Bureau's people rushed to put out the fire, the people living in the residence ran out of the door and disappeared." Disappeared? The Empress's slightly hoarse and delicate voice was full of disbelief. This was clearly set up by someone. "Who is targeting our Cao family?" Cao Guizhong nodded and said, "The Titan princess was furious. This subject urgently investigated and interrogated everyone in the area who might have been in contact with the residents. In the end, I got some clues from Xu Mao. A few days ago, the 4th young miss of the family Qin passed by here and said that she lost a gold bracelet inlaid with jade. It was picked up by someone in the residence and she asked Xu Mao to help her search. Xu Mao sternly refused. Other than the 4th young miss of the Qin family, there was no one else. That wild hussy of the family Qin? The Empress narrowed her eyes. That wild hussy is not simple. She has a foxy appearance and charmed a barbarian of the Zhou dynasty. He even gave her the large Huichun garden. This Empress looked carefully. That wild hussy looks very much like Qin Meng. Maybe she has as many wicked ideas as Qin Meng." Speaking of this, the Empress frowned and said, "Father, Qin Meng is not an easy person to deal with. This Empress has been by the Emperor's side for so long and hasn't found any useful information about Qin Meng from the Emperor. But my sister is so useless. She only thinks about love all day and can't find anything." Cao Guizhong saw that the Empress was going off topic, so he said, "It's good that your sister only treats Qin Meng wholeheartedly. Qin Meng is now my virtuous son-in-law. If we can grasp the relationship well, it will be a great help." Then why would his daughter be suspicious when she passed by that house? The Empress paused for a moment before reacting. "Father suspects that she is in contact with people from Daeju? Is Prince Zhongshuren trying to trick us?" "That's possible, but we can't rule out the possibility that she was instructed by Qin Meng." The Empress sneered, "I don't care about other things, but this wild hussy dared to be disrespectful to me, so I will settle the score with her. It doesn't matter if she's helping her father or her lover, Ben Gong will make sure that she doesn't have the life to care about these things." That day, She dared to look down on this consort and even stood to the side to laugh at this consort. How many years has it been since this consort has suffered such vexation? How could this consort lose to a little girl? Father, don't worry, Qin Yining's life is in this consort's hands. Seeing the empress like this, Cao Guozhong didn't say anything and just smiled. After Cao Guozhong left, the empress acted coquettishly in front of the emperor that night. She said that she had been having nightmares for the past few days, and because she was worried about the health of her husband and her family, she wanted to go to Xianjiyu Temple to perform rituals and pray for her family. As she spoke, she even shed tears. When the emperor saw her crying like a pear blossom in the rain, he couldn't help but feel distressed. Little darling, don't cry. You're crying until my heart is broken. I'll give you whatever you want. The emperor held the empress' waist and swayed. He muttered to himself for a moment and said, "It's not a big deal to go to the ceremony. Prince Zhongshuren will return to the capital in a few days, leaving their envoys to continue handling the compensation and handover. Once Prince Zhongshuren leaves, there won't be any hard bones left. The handover will be easier to handle. When the time comes, I'll be free. I'll accompany you, okay?" The empress pouted her red lips and tears were about to fall again. "I'm naturally overjoyed. It's just that I've been anxious these past few days and haven't been able to sleep well. Look at the wrinkles at the corners of my eyes. If your majesty is worried about me, you can arrange for someone to escort me there. I'll go to Lady Mother of the Chariot statue and kowtow a few times to feel at ease." Her white fingers slid across the emperor's lapel, and then gradually moved downwards. "When your majesty is free, I'll accompany your majesty to go again, okay?" The emperor's heart was about to melt from her coquettish behavior and her white hands constantly moving around. He immediately threw away his helmet and armor and agreed to whatever the empress wanted. The next day, the empress, under the escort of the emperor's arranged guards, went to Xianjiyu Temple to see Fairy Liu. At the same time, Qin Yining was nestled on the soft couch in Soaring Temple's reception pavilion. She was holding the soft and furry by with one hand and reading an account book with the other. Suddenly, there was the sound of hurried footsteps approaching from the corridor. In response to Miss, someone from the second gate has come to pass a message saying that Prince Zhongshuren's attendant is asking for an audience. Qin Yining was stunned. She handed the account book to Qiu Lu, who was now in charge of managing her finances, and carried by to the ground. Bing Tang and Ji Yun hurriedly followed and went straight to the reception pavilion in the outer courtyard. Just as they reached the door, they saw Huzi, who was wearing a dark blue outfit. "So it's you." Qin Yining's bandaged hand reached down and played with Bai's drooping ear. Huzi hurriedly bowed to Qin Yining. His eyes moved from her injured hand to Bing Tang, and he grinned, "Potato Spirit, you're here too." Bing Tang's face turned red from Huzi's greeting, but she didn't want to be rude in front of her miss, so she rolled her eyes at him. Huzi rubbed his nose from the glare and cupped his hands. "Fourth miss, our Wang Yi's old injury has relapsed, causing the poison from the last time to act up again. Therefore, he specially instructed me to invite Bing Tang's miss to treat him." Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. Pang Xiao's shoulder was pierced by an arrow in order to protect her. That day, his robe was stained with blood as he broke the arrow and fought again. The image of him standing in front of her and fighting against the Tatan was still engraved in her mind. Being poisoned was not a small matter. Bing Tang's medical skills were good, and she was well educated. However, she was still too young to be able to handle Bing Tang. What if there was something wrong with her? Qin Yining frowned worriedly. Bing Tang's miss didn't care and curled her lips. Is Wang Yi's poison really acting up? Huzi's face couldn't help but turn red when Bing Tang's big round eyes stared at him. He grinned even more happily. Yes, it's acting up. Therefore, I'll have to trouble fourth miss to bring Bing Tang's miss to him. He put his palms together and begged. Qin Yining was confused by Huzi's behavior. She looked at Bing Tang inquiringly. Bing Tang glared at Huzi and said, "Miss, don't listen to his nonsense." Although Wang Yi suffered a lot of injuries during the years of war, the poison had been cured at that time. Now that he is talking nonsense about his poison acting up, there must be something fishy about it. Qin Yining nodded slightly when she heard this. But Huzi said, "Fourth young miss, in any case, Seeing our prince's sincerity towards you, let's go. Qin Yining's face turned red. Pang Xiao had saved her several times. Even if the Sun clan was beheaded by the emperor, Pang Xiao did save her. In order to support her and boost her reputation, he didn't hesitate to offend people and gave her such a valuable house. This person was a little overbearing and never asked her what she liked. However, she owed him. Forget it, I'll go with you. Qin Yining handed Bai to Ji Yun. I'll go with Bing Tang. You go and tell my mother that I have something to do outside. You stay in Xingning Garden and take care of my mother. If Madame Dowager invites my mother, you can go with her. Don't make things difficult for her. Ji Yun smiled and nodded. Don't worry, Miss. She left with Bai in her arms. Chapter 160. The carriage sped along the road. The more Qin Yining looked around, the more he felt that something was amiss. Isn't this the way to Cloud Treading Inn? Why isn't Wang Yi in the guest house? That's right. Huzi smiled and said, if he wants to see an illness, it's not convenient for him to be in the guest house with so many people around. Besides, old dog Lian is there too. Qin Yining was annoyed at the thought of Lian Shengjie, that pervert. Luckily, Pang Xiao was so considerate. Not long after, the carriage arrived at the back door of Cloud Treading Inn. Qin Yining alighted from the carriage and saw two tall men waiting for him. When they saw Qin Yining, they bowed respectfully. Qin Yining felt that the two men looked familiar. They must have met at Ningyuan the other day. He smiled and nodded in return. The two men felt flattered and hurriedly cupped their hands and invited Qin Yining in. Bing Tang followed behind Qin Yining and whispered, I wonder if Master Zhong is here today. It's fine. I've already sent the account books over. It doesn't matter if he doesn't show up today. Bing Tang nodded. Huzi moved closer to Bing Tang and whispered with a smile, Hey, Potato Spirit, I think you've grown a little taller. Bing Tang rolled his eyes at him, unlike you. You're not short, but your brain isn't good. You haven't learned anything from Wang Yi, but you've learned to be glib and shameless. Huzi blinked and then shouted angrily, Don't drag Wang Yi into your scolding. You can say that I'm shameless, but how is our Wang Yi shameless? How can you pretend to be sick if you don't act shamelessly? Bing Tang glared at him. Qin Yining listened to the two bickering and felt both angry and amused. He turned around and saw Bing Tang angrily glaring at Huzi with her big round eyes. Huzi was also glaring at Bing Tang, but he couldn't hide the smile in his eyes. The two people leading the way stopped and pushed open the door to the rich and noble pavilion. Miss Qin, please come in. Thank you. Qin Yining stepped through the door first. Huzi and Bing Tang glared at each other. Bing Tang snorted and stomped hard on Huzi's foot before quickly catching up with Qin Yining. Huzi looked at the small shoe print on her foot and chuckled. The two men at the door couldn't help but snicker when they saw Huzi's silly look. Qin Yining walked past the screen and into the inner room. She saw Pang Xiao wearing a snow-white undergarment, with a light purple robe draped over his shoulders. He was sitting on the Ahat bed by the window, leaning against a big pillow and reading a book. Upon closer inspection, Qin Yining realized that his complexion wasn't very good. His lips were a little pale and his hair was a little messy. Wang Yi isn't feeling well. Qin Yining sat down on the embroidered stool next to the square table. Pang Xiao put down the book and supported his temples with one hand. He tilted his head and looked at Qin Yining. I do feel a little sick. That's why I invited Bing Tang to treat this king. Why didn't you bring Bai with you? Qin Yining gestured for Bing Tang to treat Pang Xiao. I heard that Wang Yi is sick. Since you're here to treat him, it'll be more convenient to bring Bai with you. Pang Xiao was a little dejected as he said, Oh. But then he smiled and said, It's fine. Bai isn't coming. It's good to be able to see you. What kind of words are you saying? It's as if I'm inferior to a rabbit. Qin Yining had just thought of this when he felt that something wasn't right. That's right. Why am I fighting with a rabbit? Qin Yining looked up and met Pang Xiao's smiling eyes. He glared at him angrily and said, Look at you. You're quite energetic. You don't look like you're suffering from a relapse. Pang Xiao covered his mouth and coughed twice. It wasn't clear if he was really coughing or trying to hold back his laughter. His voice was low and magnetic as he said, "I'm indeed not feeling well." Bing Tang had already taken a pulse pillow and checked Pang Xiao's pulse. After a careful examination, he stood up and sighed. "Although this isn't a relapse, it's still dangerous. Wang Yi, you have to be more optimistic. Although I can't treat your illness, maybe you'll meet someone with great medical skills in the future who can treat your illness. It's not a terminal illness. Don't be too sad." Pang Xiao looked at Bing Tang calmly. Huzi turned pale with fright. "What? Wang Yi is really sick? Hurry up and tell me. What's wrong? How can I treat him? I'll get you whatever medicine you need." Bing Tang said seriously, "Wang Yi's lovesickness is beyond cure. Forgive me for my shallow medical skills. I don't know how to treat him." Huzi was stunned. Qin Yining blushed and glared at Bing Tang. Pang Xiao laughed heartily. "Good girl. You're really good at medical skills. You're really good at diagnosing. However, I don't have to wait to find a famous doctor in the future. Didn't you bring me the medicinal primer?" He looked at Qin Yining gently. "Seeing your miss, I feel like I'm cured." Qin Yining was embarrassed and annoyed. She grabbed the lid of the teacup on the table and threw it at Pang Xiao. "Are you crazy? You're full of nonsense." Pang Xiao casually caught the lid of the blue and white porcelain teacup. He smiled and said, "I'm not crazy. I'm just drunk." When he saw the bandage on Qin Yining's hand, his expression changed. "What happened to your hand?" He didn't notice that her hand was hidden in her sleeve. Bing Tang took out her silver needles and gestured for Pang Xiao to sit up. She said, "Miss beat up Qin Huaining in the mansion. Her hand was cut twice by the golden hairpin. Her knuckles are also bruised and scraped. It's not a big problem, but it'll hurt for a while." As she spoke, she neatly inserted the needles into Pang Xiao's shoulder. Pang Xiao didn't care and let her do it. Because he was sitting upright on the Arhat bed, he could only reach out a hand to Qin Yining. He said seriously, "Come here. Let me take a look." Qin Yining sat still. "It's just a superficial wound." Pang Xiao's brows were tightly knit together. His phoenix-like eyes were filled with rage, and his handsome face was tainted with a murderous aura. He couldn't help but raise his voice. His voice was low and deep, and it shook the hearts of others. "Come over here." Qin Yining was stunned by his shout. She looked at him with her watery eyes and then looked away. She still didn't move as if she didn't hear him. On the other hand, Huzi was so frightened that all the hair on his body stood up. When his Wang Yi was angry, the people around him didn't dare to disobey him. His cold aura was like that of a beast about to eat people. Not everyone could withstand it. Miss Qin actually dared to pretend that she didn't hear him. Bing Tang was so scared that he stopped and turned around to look at Qin Yining. Pang Xiao stood up with a sullen face. He didn't care about the needle in his arm. He grabbed Qin Yining's injured right hand and suppressed his anger. "You didn't listen when I asked you to come here. You asked me to come here personally. If it's for your own good, you have to listen to me. Why should I listen to you? Who are you to me?" Qin Yining struggled twice but couldn't withdraw her hand. Her heart was still trembling because of Pang Xiao's shout. She couldn't help showing some grievance. Pang Xiao saw a layer of mist in her watery eyes and knew she was short of breath. He deftly untied the bandage and saw that there were indeed 2 cuts on her palms. Although they were no longer bleeding after applying medicine, the wounds were still somewhat red and swollen. Her finger joints were also bruised and swollen. He could not help but feel sorry for her. He brought her hands to his lips and blew on them gently. "Did Qin Huaining bully you?" Chapter 161. Qin Yining's hand was held by Pang Xiao's large hand. She could clearly feel the friction from the rough calluses on his palm, as well as the temperature that was obviously higher than her own body. She hurriedly tried to withdraw her hand, but her wrist was held by Pang Xiao neither loosely nor tightly. It was not enough to hurt her, but she could not withdraw even half an inch. Qin Yining's cheeks turned red. She rolled her watery eyes at Pang Xiao. She knew that she could not break free, so she stopped struggling. She only sneered and said, "You are underestimating me. She wanted to bully me, but now she is the one who is in a worse situation. Pang Xiao's eyes looked at the person who was just a moment ago, soft and weak, but suddenly became fierce. He felt that the soft part was softer, the fierce part was also fiercer. It was as if Bai, who did not have much destructive power, was tickled by him, and then used his little buttocks to face him. He really liked it. Seeing that the atmosphere between the two had eased, Bingtang said, "Wang Yi, sit down first. The needles are not finished yet. You have a lot of old injuries. It is inevitable that you will feel pain and itch when it rains. Later, I will give you a prescription to recuperate. You will need to take it for 1.5 years to get better." Huzi said, "Wang Yi is usually in the military camp. It is difficult for him to take medicine to recuperate. However, as long as you are willing to give me a good prescription, I will carry the medicine to Wang Yi even if I have to carry the medicine to the battlefield." Pang Xiao sat down on the embroidered stool next to Qin Yining. Bing Tang took out the needles and continued to practice. Qin Yining understood the meaning behind Huzi's words. She asked, "Why didn't Wang Yi's tiger army go back to receive the reward after making such a great contribution? Is there going to be another battle?" Huzi heard this and secretly scolded himself for his slip of the tongue. He also lamented that Qin Yining was too sharp. He did not dare to look at Pang Xiao and lowered his head. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Don't worry. No matter how busy I am during the training, I have a way to come and see you." Qin Yining understood that he wanted to say goodbye. He also knew that he was Wang Yi from Daeju and could not stay in the Dian dynasty forever. Although he wanted to say goodbye, this person was too unscrupulous. "Wang Yi, it is better to be careful with your words. Aren't you afraid of criticism and misunderstanding?" Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows and said, "Go ask around. Go out and ask." This person was. Qin Yining said with shame and annoyance, "Why are you so domineering? I hope you will not speak like this in the future. Who you like is your business. Don't make fun of me. You and I are from different countries. We have different standpoints. Moreover, there is a national grudge between us. You know it is impossible, so why do you keep doing this? That is to say, if there is no national grudge, if there is no national difference, you will think it is possible between us? At most, this prince will just eliminate these differences." Qin Yining looked at the serious Pang Xiao in surprise. At this time, he was different from his usual frivolous attitude in front of her. His expression was very focused and serious. Qin Yining's heart could not help but skip a beat. "You really don't have to joke with me about such a serious topic. I am a little girl. I can't bear it. Who told you that this was a joke? You." Qin Yining was so angry that her face turned red. Facing Pang Xiao, she could not understand what this person was thinking. He was always very domineering towards her. He never asked for her opinion, but everything he did was for her own good. She could not really get angry. He did things without any rules. Even if she wanted to plan something, she could not grasp the pattern. She could not predict what he would do next. In the officialdom, this kind of person was the type that people hated but could not do anything about. Why did she have to meet this kind of person? Seeing that Qin Yining looked away and did not say anything, Pang Xiao smiled helplessly and said, "Why are you angry? Don't think too much. You know that many things are irresistible." As if he could see that Qin Yining did not want to talk about this matter, Pang Xiao did not want to dwell on this topic. He sighed and said, "I know you are not at ease. Don't worry. I am not a frivolous person. Have you seen me flirt with others?" Qin Yining's face became hot again. Before she could say anything, Huzi said, "Fourth miss, I can testify that our Wang Yi has never been so attentive to any woman." He looked so serious that he almost raised 3 fingers to swear. Pang Xiao looked at Huzi with satisfaction and said to Qin Yining, "Don't worry. I will definitely think of a way to marry you." Qin Yining's mind exploded. Her face and ears turned red as she stared at Pang Xiao. She had mixed feelings and did not know what she was feeling. "When did I say that I wanted to marry you? The whole world knows that you are my woman. If you don't marry me, who do you want to marry?" Pang Xiao narrowed her almond-shaped eyes. There was a dangerous look in her eyes. Or do you like bookworms like Yuchi Yang? Qin Yining felt even more incredulous when she heard that he had implicated the crown prince. She said, "Why do you have to say such nonsense to stab me?" Pang Xiao looked at her carefully and said in a slightly gentler tone, "That guy only has a good appearance. He is indecisive and only knows how to write and draw. He is not good enough for you." Qin Yining wanted to say, "Then you are good enough for me." But she swallowed the words when they were about to come out of her mouth. Her face was as red as the sunset. Her face, neck, and ears were all red. Pang Xiao saw that her whole body had turned pink. She was as soft as a glutinous rice cake and he wanted to take a bite of her. He felt more and more tempted. At this time, Bing Tang had already removed the needles. Huzi went to prepare a robe for Pang Xiao. He looked at Qin Yining deeply and turned to go into the inner room to change. Bing Tang went to the side to write a prescription. Qin Yining looked down at her right hand that had been carefully bandaged by Pang Xiao while they were talking. She was a little lost in thought. Did she hate Pang Xiao? The answer was no. Not only did she not hate him, but sometimes when she saw him, she even faintly felt a little happy. He was indeed too domineering, but the things he did all showed how much he valued and liked her. She could not resist all of this, but it also warmed her heart. Especially when he saved and protected her time and time again. Qin Yining was a lonely person who was used to being independent. She was always planning for herself and for others. No matter if it was when she was a child or when she was in the Sun Clan, she was always used to putting these people under her protection. Since she was a child, she rarely experienced the feeling of being protected by others. She even felt that even though she had given birth to a girl, she was actually stronger than a man on the inside. Only when she met Pang Xiao did she truly feel that she was a girl. She also knew that she also had times when she was weak and needed to rely on others. This kind of feeling made her thump. But while she was secretly happy and excited, her rationality kept telling her that there were too many things between them. Qin Yining's slender and fair left hand gently stroked her right hand, and her lowered eyelashes covered the emotions in her eyes. Pang Xiao came out wearing a black python robe and saw Qin Yining with her head lowered, deep in thought. Her satin long hair was softly draped behind her back, and her fair and delicate neck looked slender. The outline of her side profile was also very beautiful. Her slightly knitted eyebrows and lowered eyelashes all showed that she had something on her mind, as if she had accumulated a lot of worries and had nowhere to vent them. This realization made Pang Xiao feel like a stone was pressing down on his heart. In the past, he couldn't figure out his own thoughts. He only felt that he cared and was curious about Qin Yining because they met when they were young. Or maybe it was because all her suffering was caused by his father's AIDS, so he felt that she was innocent and wanted to make up for it. Or maybe it was because they were both controlled by people's fates. Pang Xiao admitted that he was too domineering towards her, and it was all because of a little possessiveness. But these days, he couldn't control his emotions every time he encountered her. His rationality often lost and his feelings took the upper hand. Everything he did was biased towards her. This made him understand that perhaps his heart was more honest than his rationality, and he might like her more than he expected. At first, he felt that they were separated by the country and their relationship was complicated. Her father was also a famous Dayan minister. As the only prince with a different surname in Daeju, it would be difficult for him to marry her officially. But the more he interacted with her, the more his heart was biased towards her. He even began to feel that even if marrying her was a very difficult thing, it would require a lot of energy, and he would have to change many of his previous plans and redeploy many things. All of this seemed to be worth it. Perhaps Qin Yining still had some resistance. But in Pang Xiao's heart, he already regarded her as his woman. And making his woman frown was his biggest incompetence as a man. What's wrong? Pang Xiao squatted in front of Qin Yining. Qin Yining was surprised by his actions and quickly shook her head. The pearl buyao behind her head swayed with a bright halo. If there's anything that makes you unhappy, just tell me. Pang Xiao's tone was very serious. His intimate and natural words made Qin Yining a little absent-minded. It was as if they had known each other for a long time and were used to speaking so naturally. Wang Yi, you don't have to, you can just call me Jishi. Pang Xiao took her hand and stood up. I told you a long time ago that my courtesy name is Jishi. Qin Yining's face turned red again. She lowered her head and refused to answer. How intimate was it to call a man by his courtesy name? Seeing that her face was almost hanging on his chest, Pang Xiao was in a good mood. He smiled and said, "My subordinates sent a few good Daju horses. I picked 2 docile ones. I'll give one to you and the other to Miss Tang as a thank you gift for treating my illness. The weather is good today. How about I take you to the suburbs for a walk?" Bing Tang's eyes lit up when she heard this. She didn't even bother to pack her medical kit and eagerly said, "Wang Yi, are you serious?" "Of course I'm serious." Pang Xiao bent down slightly to look at Qin Yining's face. "How about it? Do you want to go?" Qin Yining wanted to go very much. Although she had never learned proper horsemanship, she knew how to ride a horse. Because she had been saved by a wild horse before and lived with a herd of wild horses, she had a special liking for horses. However, it was a little unreasonable for her to follow him to ride a horse. Pang Xiao grabbed her uninjured left hand. His strength was very gentle, but his words were full of impatience. "I shouldn't have asked for your opinion. Next time, I'll just kidnap you and leave." Qin Yining was dragged downstairs just like that. Chapter 162. Qin Yining had lived in the mansion for a long time. Even though the master's study was located next to the back garden of the Marquis's mansion, one could see the man-made lake, vegetation, and rocks just by leaning against the railing. However, no matter how beautiful the man-made scenery was, it could not compare to the natural scenery in front of one's eyes. This place was already outside the city. It was early spring in the south. In April, the grass was long and the orioles were flying in the air. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao stood side by side and looked around. The wide grassland was occasionally dotted with new wildflowers. The mountains in the distance were lush green. Not far away, there was a small river that reflected the clear blue sky. The sound of water gurgling could be heard. Occasionally, there were grey rabbits jumping happily on the grassland. White butterflies were flying and dancing on the unknown wildflowers. Their breath was filled with the unique fragrance of spring grass. Nearby, there were a few horses eating grass with their heads lowered. For a moment, Qin Yining felt as if she had returned to the difficult but free time in the mountains. "How is it? Do you like it?" Pang Xiao asked her with his hands behind his back and his head lowered. His eyes were somewhat cautious, like a child who longed for praise. Qin Yining laughed softly and nodded. "I like it very much. How did you find this place?" Seeing that she was no longer wearing a straight face and was emphasizing etiquette and status like an old scholar, Pang Xiao was very happy. He smiled and said, "I'm used to being free. When I have nothing to do, I like to ride a horse and go out for a ride. I found this place by chance and wanted to bring you here to take a look." He held her hand with his large hand and walked towards the horses at the side. Qin Yining's face flushed red. She struggled twice, but his large hand held her even tighter. Looking around, Qin Yining saw that the people Pang Xiao brought were all looking down with no expression on their faces. Only then did Qin Yining's heart feel a little better. Pang Xiao pointed at a tall white horse not far away and said with a smile, "This is White Cloud. I'm giving it to you. Do you like it?" Qin Yining was captivated by the handsome white horse in front of him at first glance. Its body was a shiny silvery white color without any impurities, and its coat was as bright as silver satin under the sun. Its big, furry eyes were moist and gentle, and when it saw Qin Yining approaching, it broke free from the retainer holding the horse and trotted happily to Qin Yining. It lowered its head and gently rubbed against Qin Yining's cheek and neck, as if they had grown up together. Qin Yining laughed happily. He stretched out his long arms and hugged the white horse's neck. "You're called by Yun. Do you like me?" The horse gently rubbed Qin Yining's neck and cheeks. "You're so beautiful. I like you so much." Qin Yining hugged White Cloud and didn't let go. Pang Xiao had never seen Qin Yining so happy. He had never heard her laughter so clear and melodious, and he had never heard her speak in such a soft and delicate tone as if she was coaxing a child. In his memory, Qin Yining was always cautious, self-restrained, intelligent, and decisive. She was rational and strong. She didn't seem like an unmarried woman at all, but like an adult who had experienced a lot. Only when she was so lively and happy now, she was a real 15-year-old girl. Her voice was like a small brush brushing against Pang Xiao's heart. In fact, he also wanted to hug her neck and say to her, "You're so beautiful. I like you so much." Qin Yining hugged White Cloud's neck and turned around to ask Pang Xiao, "Wang Yi really wants to give it to me?" Her bright smile was still on her face, and the two dimples on her cheeks were extremely cute. Pang Xiao's gaze was extremely soft. He smiled and said, "Of course it's true. White Cloud is also a Fergana horse. It's a distant relative of Black Cloud. It can be considered as his younger brother. If you miss me in the future, let White Cloud take you out for a walk." Pang Xiao took over the reins handed to him by Huzi, then patted his warhorse, which had a shiny black coat. Qin Yining nodded repeatedly. Black Cloud, White Cloud, it sounds like they are relatives. She took the reins and nimbly mounted the horse. Her skirt fluttered lightly, drawing a beautiful arc on the horse's body. Pang Xiao saw her confident and at ease posture of mounting the horse, and her valiant and formidable-looking appearance as she sat upright on the horse. His heart thumped like a drum several times. He fought on the battlefield and was in a trance. Naturally, he didn't admire those delicate and weak women, nor did he like women who only knew how to put on airs. He was attracted to Qin Yining because of her appearance, but more because of her temperament and way of dealing with things. But today, just Qin Yining's action of mounting the horse really hit his heart. Pang Xiao seemed to hear the sound of fireworks exploding in the sky. She was indeed the one who should belong to him. She was good at both civil and martial arts. She was both tough and soft. How could Qin Yining have the time to pay attention to Pang Xiao's performance? She shook the reins, and White Cloud immediately galloped away excitedly. She lowered her body, her long hair fluttering behind her head and her skirt fluttering in the wind. She heard the sound of the wind whistling in her ears. The wind hit her face and body, and the refreshing air was mixed with the fragrance of grass and flowers. She felt that all the depression in her heart had disappeared in this vast world. Huzi and the Jinghu Wei saw Qin Yining mounting the horse and galloping away. They were originally nervous and wanted to chase after her. What a joke! If something happened to Miss Qin under their watch, Wang Yi would definitely swallow them alive. But in just a few breaths, White Cloud had already galloped several zhong away. Although their horses ran fast, they couldn't keep up with White Cloud's speed. Fortunately, upon closer inspection, Qin Yining's riding skills were very exquisite, which made them feel relieved. Huzi turned the horse around and galloped back to Pang Xiao's side. Seeing Pang Xiao holding the reins and standing beside Black Cloud in a daze, and her eyes were blurred as if she was deep in thought, Pang Xiao couldn't help but worry. "Master, fourth young lady has already run far away. Aren't you going to chase after her and take a look?" Pang Xiao came back to her senses and steadied her mind before jumping onto the horse's back. Looking into the distance, Qin Yining's figure had already turned into a small dot. Pang Xiao couldn't help laughing. "With White Cloud's speed, we won't be able to catch up. Don't worry, she'll be back soon." Huzi said, "I didn't expect fourth young lady's riding skills to be so exquisite. White Cloud is usually so arrogant that I can't even touch it. But when it saw fourth young lady, it actually clung on to her. It really doesn't have any of the pride of a Fergana horse. Could it be that horses nowadays also know how to look at beauties?" As soon as Huzi finished speaking, he felt a chill run down his spine. He turned around and saw Pang Xiao's half-smiling eyes. Huzi's heart quivered. He carefully recalled what he had just said and immediately began to sweat profusely. He swore to the heavens that he definitely didn't mean to mock his Wang Yi. "Hey, master, I'll go check on Potato Fairy." Huzi pulled the reins and fled in panic. He chased after Bing Tang, who was happily riding on a date-red horse. Pang Xiao found it funny. He urged his horse to meet Qin Yining, but he was thinking about another problem. Should he not have given Qin Yining a stallion? He should have picked a mare for her. Thinking about how Qin Yining hugged White Cloud, praised it for its beauty, and said that he liked it, Pang Xiao couldn't help but feel depressed. Qin Yining didn't hug him, didn't praise him for his beauty, and didn't say that he liked him. He couldn't even compare to a horse. Chapter 163. Qin Yining had not felt so refreshed in a long time. Ever since she returned to the Marquis Fu, her days had been like walking on thin ice. Her only goal was to continue living. Later, she experienced the fall of her maternal family. She was forced to participate in the peace talks, her mother was almost beheaded, and she was kidnapped by her maternal grandmother. When she thought about all of these things, she realized that in less than half a year after returning to the Fu, she had racked her brains more than she had in the 14 years she had spent outside. Her self-restraint had also reached the limit. Today, she felt as if she had thrown away all of her worries after letting the reins go. Gradually slowing down, Qin Yining looked at the man sitting on the tall horse and wearing a black embroidered robe. Qin Yining's mind was momentarily distracted. The tall and handsome man sat on the black and shiny horse. His back was straight, and he had the masculine and heroic aura of a soldier. Paired with his long eyebrows, phoenix eyes, high nose, and thin lips, there was a sense of freedom in his handsomeness. His smile even had some joy and naivety. Scenes from when they had met each other flooded her mind. Qin Yining could not help but blush. She forced herself to look away, afraid that his charm and sharpness would burn her eyes. Pang Xiao urged his horse closer, and the two pulled on the reins. White Cloud and Black Cloud seemed to be familiar with each other. They snorted and approached each other, their necks touching, their ears rubbing against each other. Pang Xiao looked at Qin Yining with a smile. "How is it? Don't you feel much better after running for a while?" Qin Yining's cheeks were red. He nodded heavily and said, "I haven't run so freely in a long time. I have to thank you for giving me White Cloud. If you want to thank me, are you only going to say it verbally?" Pang Xiao shook the reins and rode side by side with Qin Yining. The two Fergana horses, one black and one white, slowly walked towards the official road. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Is Wang Yi such a petty person? All right, how do you want me to thank you? I want you to devote yourself to me. Do you agree?" Pang Xiao laughed. Qin Yining's face suddenly turned red, and he glared at him with a red face and ears. Why is Wang Yi always joking like this? He's not a lecher, yet he keeps saying such things. People will laugh at him if they hear him. Who dares to laugh at me? Pang Xiao leaned closer to Qin Yining and looked at her seriously. Besides, I'm not joking. Qin Yining pursed her lips. Her long eyelashes fluttered, but she didn't say a word. She simply allowed Pang Xiao to hold her reins, allowing the White Cloud and the Dark Cloud to travel side by side. From Pang Xiao's angle, he could see her red ears and neck, as well as her long eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings when she was nervous. Seeing that she did not speak, Pang Xiao was delighted. She didn't reject him, which meant that she didn't hate him. Maybe she liked him. There was no rush. As long as she didn't hate him, there was still hope. Pang Xiao chuckled, and suddenly urged his horse to gallop on the official road. Qin Yining was startled and quickly grabbed the reins. "Why did you suddenly speed up? You scared me." Her reproachful words were carried by the wind to his ears. They were soft and gentle, making him itch from the bottom of his heart. The sky was blue and the trees were green. The sky was high and the ground was wide. He was riding his beloved horse with his beloved woman by his side. Pang Xiao only felt an unprecedented satisfaction at this moment. A sense of heroism arose spontaneously, making him laugh loudly. His laughter lasted for a long time. Huzi and the two Jinghu Wei who were following behind felt his carefree and heroic spirit, and they also laughed out loud. Huzi thought of the war song in the army, so he stretched his neck and sang loudly, clad in iron armor, carrying a long sword. "Fighting with my son, the road is long." Huzi's voice was loud and clear, which was unique to youth. In the vast world, Qin Yining couldn't help but feel agitated when he heard such a voice full of energy. Just as Qin Yining turned around to look, Pang Xiao's deep and vigorous voice sounded beside him. "Sharing a common enemy, living and dying together. Fighting with my son, my heart is not lazy." The two Jinghu Wei also sang loudly, stepping on Yang Ran, chasing after Hu Er. "Fighting with my son, my song is fearless." The man's deep and vigorous voice was not tactful, only full of heroic spirit. In such a vast world, with comrades by his side and hot blood surging, the war song sung by these iron-blooded men in the army was majestic, with the momentum of a landslide and a tsunami. Qin Yining's heart trembled and his cheeks flushed. He even felt a sense of anticipation for riding his horse on the battlefield. These were real men who fought on the battlefield. Even if they were from different countries, in troubled times, they would rather be cut to pieces to protect their own countries. But compared to the prosperity and corruption of the Dayan imperial capital, Qin Yining couldn't help but sigh when she thought of the fatuous emperor and the demon empress who sought pleasure all day long, committing all sorts of outrages, and having the courage to murder meritorious officials, but without the courage to draw a bow on the battlefield and trample on the ground. After running for a while, Pang Xiao slowed down. Qin Yining looked over and saw a large group of people on the official road not far away. Although they were still far away, she could see that the leader was Qin Huayuan, who was wearing a red official's robe. The rest of the people were all wearing officials' robes. Because she didn't know them, she couldn't see their faces clearly. But she could tell that there were Dayan officials and Daju soldiers in this group. Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Pang Xiao questioningly. Pang Xiao had already let go of her reins and led Huzi and the two Jinghu Wei soldiers forward. Qin Yining naturally slowed down her horse's hooves and stopped a distance away from Bing Tang. Bing Tang was also surprised. He whispered, "Miss, I'm afraid they are here to send us off. Today should be the day Wang Yi departs." Qin Yining couldn't hide the complex emotions in her eyes. She sighed faintly and felt an indescribable sense of loss in her heart. This person probably tricked her to come out because he wanted to see her again. But after the joy and happiness she had just experienced, she suddenly had to face separation. Qin Yining felt an indescribable sense of sorrow in her heart. She was surprised to find that there were tears in her eyes. This was really bad. What was her relationship with him? Why was she sad? Qin Huayuan saw that his daughter was following behind Pang Xiao's group. Qin Yining and Bing Tang's horses were exceptionally handsome and were even taller than the horses of Dayan. He knew that Pang Xiao must have sent them off. Today's trip must have been planned by Pang Xiao. Qin Huayuan couldn't help but feel a bit helpless. There were many officials from the Ministry of Rights present today to send them off. The rumors of Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's relationship had already spread throughout the city. They had publicly expressed their feelings for each other and even sent them off as gifts. Now that Pang Xiao was returning to the country, there were actually women sending them off in a place where women shouldn't be. Didn't this prove the relationship between the two even more? The officials from the Ministry of Rights had already started to exchange greetings with Pang Xiao. They exchanged some pleasantries. The group of people sending them off and escorting them moved forward in an orderly manner. Taking advantage of the fact that Pang Xiao was leading the group, Qin Huyan quickly walked in front of Qin Yining and said, "You and Miss Tang should go back first." Qin Yining nodded and was about to agree. Unexpectedly, Pang Xiao could still hear the commotion even though they were so far away. He turned around and said, "This place is very far from the capital. I'm afraid it's not safe for Miss Qin to go back alone. Since we're already here, why don't we let her accompany us? It's not impossible for her to follow Grand Preceptor Qin back to the city later." The officials from the Ministry of Rights looked at each other with an expression that said, "As expected." Lian Shengjie stared blankly at Qin Yining, who was sitting upright on the white horse, with eyes full of envy and desire. Qin Huayuan could only sigh when he heard this. He got on his horse and said, "Come with me. Later, come back with your father." Qin Yining could only nod and stare at Pang Xiao from a distance. Although she knew that he was probably reluctant to leave so suddenly and was just thinking of a way to spend more time with her, she was still very unhappy that he had planned everything but was unwilling to tell her. Unexpectedly, Pang Xiao was not angry when Qin Yining stared at him. He even laughed out loud and confidently continued to chat with the officials beside him. Qin Yining, on the other hand, was so angry that his face turned red. Amidst their conversation, the procession moved on for about an hour, and it was time for the civil official to return. For the rest of the journey, the soldiers of Great Yang, who were responsible for the safety of the envoy, and the elite tiger guards who served Pang Xiao would continue to escort him. The group slowly stopped. Pang Xiao said to Lian Shengjie, who was accompanying him, "This king has been summoned back to the capital. From now on, the matter of reparations between Yang and Zhu will be handed over to Lian Daren. I hope that Daren will not forget the proper business and will not disappoint the emperor." Lian Shengjie's mouth twitched. He was now afraid of Pang Xiao. When he saw him, he wanted to hide. Even if he used a high and mighty tone to admonish Pang Xiao, he only wanted Pang Xiao to scram. Lian Shengjie respectfully cupped his hands and responded, "Wang Yi, do not worry." Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows and smiled. Among the people sending them off, there were a few people who suspected that Pang Xiao's position in the Zhu Emperor's heart had fallen. In the end, Pang Xiao was the Zhu Emperor's sworn brother. If his position had really fallen, how could a proud person like Lian Shengjie accept Pang Xiao's admonishment? They probably had to consider whether the rumors were true or false. Pang Xiao had already moved his horse towards Qin Yining. The dark clouds were black and shiny, while the white clouds were silvery white. The two equally precious horses rubbed their necks against each other as soon as they saw each other. Pang Xiao, who was sitting upright on the dark cloud, looked at Qin Yining with a smile. Qin Yining wanted nothing more than to immediately jump off the back of the white cloud and flee. He was afraid that Pang Xiao would say something that would shock him to death. Even if you accompany a guest for 1,000 miles, you still have to part in the end. Take care of yourself, Miss Qin. Qin Yining secretly let out a sigh of relief. Prince Zhongshuren, take care. Pang Xiao then cupped his hands towards Qin Huayuan. Grand Preceptor Qin. Qin Huayuan returned the greeting. Wang Yi, have a safe journey. The two sides said their goodbyes. Huzi also made a face at Bing Tang. This time, they were truly saying their goodbyes. Pang Xiao and Huzi turned their horses around and headed towards the front of the group. Qin Yining frowned slightly as he looked at Pang Xiao's back. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the majestic sound of horse hooves suddenly came from both sides of the road. Looking left and right, there were actually more than 30 riders rushing out from the forest and bushes on both sides of the road. Every single one of them had a weapon in their hands. The edges of their blades and swords shone brightly under the sunlight as they charged out with murderous intent. Kill the one surnamed Feng. Kill him. The roars of the 30 or so men resounded through the sky as they charged into the group in the blink of an eye. No one expected that there would be assassins lying in ambush on the way to see them off. Qin Yining tightly pursed his red lips as he assessed the strength of the enemy. Just as he was about to turn around and speak to Qin Huayuan, he suddenly felt something tighten around his waist. The next moment, he was lifted into the air and immediately fell into a warm embrace. Pang Xiao actually rushed over and hugged her from white clouds back into his arms. He casually drew his sword and brandished it to parry the blades that were coming towards him. He slapped Black Cloud with the scabbard, and like a bolt of black lightning, Black Cloud sped forward with Pang Xiao and Qin Yining in tow. They rushed out of the group and left the chaos behind them. Don't let them escape. Chase after them. The assassins' roars shook the heavens as they urged their horses to chase after them. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.